Hello. Hello. I'm never ready with the links. We got this one. Okay, let me get the chat. Hello. Is anyone here yet? Getting a little bit smoother with starting the stream. But yeah, I'll wait a minute for people to roll in. What was I doing? Oh, here's what I should do. Actually, is this a spoiler though? Here's what I should do while waiting for people to roll in. Except I'm just gonna look at it. I don't wanna spoil anyone. What's up, Peepa? Bing Bong Love. Wait. Wait. Oh, that's wait, I was confused. I was thinking that was a Baby Steps thing, but it's a peak thing. That makes a little more sense. How's it going, Caitlin? Shout out Bing Bong though. Are we peak fans here in the Jack Crawford community or whatever this is? I thought it was a good game. I was very pleasantly surprised. Howdy, Misa. Okay. There's just so many little surprises in it and stuff. And I love how long it is. Yeah, it's just, I think they did a decent job of like actually making it about friend stuff, you know? It leans into, it's not just a game where you're climbing a mountain and the mechanics are all about climbing the mountain, and then you can also do that with your friends like most co-op games. And even I feel like most of these friend slop games, like, I don't know, I haven't played that many of them, so maybe I should refrain from criticizing them. But you know, a lot of co-op games don't really lean into the co-op stuff. And Peak, you know, with the audio, you know, all this stuff about all the mechanics involving like things you can only hear at certain distances, and the just like the trumpet or whatever it is, and different echoiness in different locations and all that. And then like all the weird stuff that happen, you know, when you turn into a mushroom guy and you're like confused, like, is this my friend, and all of that, you know, they lean into the fact that it's a game that you're playing with your friends a lot better than most games. Yeah. And yeah, it's very charming. You got it? Okay, well, maybe I can close it now without actually looking at it myself. Odd even, never-ending game. Never-ending game. Odd even? Odd even. There's some interesting possibilities for what this could be. I'm not gonna say anything though. Anticipating A big walk. Yes, I am. Let's just look at that for a second. A big walk trailer. Yeah, this game looks interesting. I don't know much about it, and I don't want to know much about it.
We're House.
Do I have?
You might know us because of our Goose Game.
This is a talking trailer. I'm not gonna let it. I'm not gonna let it do that to me. You can read the words on the screen. But yeah, this seems interesting. I mean, just already, right? They're doing a good job showing, this pose. Is this like a cross-legged pose, or is this like a reclining, like legs sticking out kind of pose or something? I don't know. It looks. This is very funny. They're showing interesting friend stuff that you can do. Talking and walking. Yeah. Is this from the House? Yeah. The creators of Untitled Goose Game. That's funny. I was just talking about, or I just mentioned Untitled Goose Game in the Discord. Yeah, I mean, it says it's full of challenges, puzzles, and discoveries. Like when they say, oh, it's just about talking and walking, that makes me a little worried that it's a big empty world. And it's fun because you're walking around a big empty world with your friends, which is not fun to me. Or at least I would rather do that in real life, so it's not an appealing thing for a video game to be. Yeah, I do know people. Shout out those guys. But yeah, it seems well put together, and you just get a sense from the surface level elements that there's artistry behind this thing, right? And I enjoyed Goose Game well enough. It wasn't, I don't know if I would say it's exactly my type of thing, but this seems maybe more my type of thing. I mean, this is cool. Is this baby steps except the map is real? Yeah. The environment is like oddly detailed. Crunchy textures. Yeah, this is great. I don't know anything. I still don't really know what the gameplay feels like at all, but that's an interesting flair. That's really interesting. If it really just hangs there like that and keeps the full path, like, that's just such a good design decision, I feel like. I mean, why make me remember, right? Why make it fade? I mean, maybe there are things you could do with making it fade, but it's just a little bit, I don't know, maybe I'm reading too much into this or interpreting this the wrong way, but like that seems interesting. You just get a sense from certain things that are odd, right? When something is it looks a bit odd compared to other games, and in the trailer you get a sense that, okay, they probably thought about this and they probably have intent here to make an interesting experience that's different from other games. This is all me getting back to judging games before you play them, which I saw people talking about. I saw people talking about this on Twitter the other day, like someone like got timed out in a Discord server or something for saying that like the game looks bad in the trailer or something, like judging a game from the trailer, and then it generated a bunch of discourse that seemed totally in agreement with my thing that like everyone was hating on. So I guess some people are on the same page with me about the whole reviewing Saros before I play it thing that I did. But yeah, this I thought he was gonna keep the binoculars and kick the friend, right? You could steal your friend's binoculars and kick them into the ocean. But then he kicks the binoculars. Hopefully you can also kick your friend. That might be the joke, really? Maybe maybe. Yeah, excited about this. And excited about this Metacryptic that I will do later. So, last stream, which is now 2 weeks ago, I did this. I did scrolling Metacritic best games of all time until I find a good game, which unsurprisingly ruffled some feathers, right? And my goal is never exactly to ruffle feathers when I do these things, but more so I was trying to get at something about what it is that we broadly consider a good game in video games and things like that. And I'm still interested in that, and I feel like, I'm not really bothered by backlash. This stream got a surprising number of views after the fact, and mostly negative comments, I would say. There are some nice ones, but I'm not really bothered by backlash, but it did make me feel like I don't know if I really did the best job of getting at the really interesting part that I was trying to get at here. Like, the concept was obviously meant to be funny, but like, I also wanted to make some serious points about like what it is, like what do you mean when you say that a game is good, right? And what do different people mean, or what are the potential things that can mean, and how does that influence how you think about games and things like that? And I'm still interested in that. And I was thinking, well, maybe I can clarify my position by like, maybe I should go back and like, people were really hung up on Ocarina of Time, right? That I said that Ocarina of Time is not a good game, or at least I said it was a good game for kids or something like that. And maybe I should do a stream where like I pull up Ocarina of Time gameplay and we like take some segment of Ocarina of Time, some like cross section of the game, and like talk through it and try to figure out like how that would work for different types of players and stuff. But that seemed really complicated, and it also seemed really negative. Yeah, just I'm not trying to be negative all the time. I like talking about things that I like. So what I decided I should do instead is just do the opposite thing and talk about the games that I actually do like. And that would be these, for example. And get at it that way. Like, what do I mean as a contrast to the Metacritic stream, as a kind of, I want this to be a kind of what do you call it? Like a companion piece to the Metacritic stream, but hopefully a more positive one, and you can understand, like, hopefully I can get at what I mean, at least when I say that a game is good, and what I'm looking for, and why. Maybe if you were mad, or probably the people who are mad are just gone, but maybe if you didn't fully understand like why I was being so dismissive of all the top 100 games on Metacritic, maybe by contrast this will help you understand what it is that I'm looking for. What better way to explain why Ocarina of Time is bad than by talking about talking about what it's not. It's not like these games. And I will get into why. Help me understand. I don't know what you mean by you there, but yeah, I still need to understand what a good game actually is. And maybe we'll talk about that at the end, but I want to spend some time like really trying to explain, which is very hard, by the way. Like, I have very high standards for like actually articulating what it is that I really like about a game. Like, you can say a lot about a game without getting to the heart of what's really special about it or what you really like about it. And often when I read or watch game reviews, I feel like they're saying a lot of stuff that's like maybe cool or neat, but not really the reason why it's like the greatest game of all time to them or whatever. And yeah, so it's hard. I'm not just hating on other game critics. I'm saying it's hard for me as well, and so I'm gonna try to take my time and really try to say the most, not even the most interesting things, because that's also a trap that people fall into. Like, critics will try to say things that are interesting at the expense of saying things that, instead, when they could be saying things that are accurate too, or like important, right? Like, sometimes hopefully you get what I'm saying. But yeah. You might notice, by the way, that there are 9 games on the screen right now. And the title says top 10 games. Also, this is not ordered. Well, first of all, how's it going, Sam? And Arsing, how's it going? I agree, Aniki, actually. I actually completely agree with that. But thank you for saying it. Yeah. We will decide what the 10th game is later. I haven't decided yet. But I do have a list that I made a while ago of my top 50 games of all time, and that is actually ordered. And that one was a little bit thrown together and not as considered as this collection of 9 here. So there are definitely some things missing from that, but I'll pull that up later, and we'll try to figure out what my 10th favorite game of all time is. Or maybe, I don't know, I kind of feel like Post Void might be number 10 and something else can sneak up to number 9. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, first I'm going to talk through these. So this is going to be so hard, man. Okay. The Witness. There's just so much to The Witness by itself. Like, maybe I should start with an easier one to ease into this. Maybe I should start with Steven's Sausage Roll. See, I'm already having to control myself and not fall into the trap of, like, I love this as cover art. Like, this is not the point. We're trying to get to the we're trying to get to the most important things about the game that make it one of the greatest games of all time to me. Okay, let me pull up some Steven's Sausage Roll footage. I don't know if we want walkthrough. Maybe we do want a let's play. A TAS. This level is so fire. Yeah, sure. We'll do a walkthrough muted. No, you can't fully explain it, right? If you could explain succinctly what is great about The Witness, like really explain it in a way that will get people to fully understand what you feel about the game, like there would almost be no point in the game existing, like, right? Like, that's like, or like people wouldn't have to play the game. Like, there's a thing about, the thing about art is that you have to experience it yourself. And so I'm not striving to get you to fully understand without playing these games, but I am striving to kind of point at what's special about these games and make you interested enough if there's a chance that you might be the type of person for whom these games would resonate in a similar way, motivate you, convince you to maybe give these games a try, or maybe to take them seriously or think about them or whatever. And if you have played them, then maybe to appreciate them more in hindsight or something. Okay, Steven's Sausage Roll feels like an easier one to start with. So that's what we're going to do. Steven's Sausage Roll. Loving the gameplay. I need to pay less attention to the gameplay if I'm ever going to get through this. Okay, Steven's Sausage Roll. It's, first of all, I guess I can talk a bit about why I like puzzle games in general, puzzle games are kind of like the most fundamental genre of video game. And I think that's like a kind of, I feel like that's a controversial thing to say, but I talked recently. Yeah, one interesting thing about this game is it's the best tank controls game ever. Anyway, yeah, I do love that about it. There's a sense in which puzzles are like the most fundamental thing in games, or at least a puzzle is a very focused. It's very focused on puzzle gameplay is very focused on figuring things out, right? And it lasers in, a puzzle lasers in on one specific thing that you need to figure out, and a good puzzle is designed to give you an interesting experience figuring that thing out, right? What's up, Aloe? And figuring things out is kind of the fundamental thing in video games, almost, or almost like in art in general. That's maybe a bit of a stretch, but like so many action games, the way that you get better at them, or so many other kinds of games, the way that when you have a breakthrough, the thing that's preventing you from getting better at it, or getting unstuck, or just appreciating it more, is that you need to figure something out. And so there's at least some sense in which figuring things out is like the core of, and not even video games, right? Figuring things out is like the core of life. There's some paper about like, I wish I could link this for you. Maybe someone else can find it, but there's some paper that's like comparing different levels, competitors of different skill levels in like any activity, like any competitive, like Olympic swimmers, and also like professional versus amateur, like pianists, and like all of these different like skill-based activities in real life. And the conclusion of the paper, and it's like the paper is trying to get at what separates the different levels, right? And the interesting conclusion that they came to is that there's almost never like or at least I might be exaggerating it a little bit, but there's much less of like there seems to be much less of like a genetic difference, or like a whatever kind of difference than you would expect in these kind of things. And instead, the people who are better are just actually doing a different set of things. And that, one of those things might be like practicing more, but it also might be like practicing a little bit less and spending the rest of the time doing this and that. Like it gets the things, the quote unquote things that they're doing gets very like fine grained and stuff. But the basic conclusion of the paper, which I feel like I agree with based on like my experience in competitive games. Like when I was speedrunning Majora's Mask, like I could see the difference between me and like people who were trying to beat my times, and like the difference between me and like and when I play a game that I'm not the best at, like I can see that there are clear differences between me and the people who are the best at it, that if I did the same things that they did, right, I would probably be approximately at their level. Anyway, like and so what I'm trying to say with all this is that life is about being able to figure things out. And sometimes, often you can just copy other people and skip and bypass figuring things out for yourself. But often in life, things go better for you if you can figure things out for yourself, and you can do more interesting things if you are really good at figuring things out for yourself. And not just it's not just about how good you are at it. It's also about, can you can you enjoy doing that? Can you enjoy trying to figure things out for yourself and the struggle to figure things out for yourself? And I feel like by playing puzzle games in general, I have gotten a lot better at figuring things out, which by itself has made it more enjoyable for me to try to figure things out in games and in life. Because when you are better at doing something, then you can do it in a deeper way. You can get to deeper levels of it that are more rich and interesting somehow. But it's also, playing puzzle games has also made me appreciate the aesthetic experience kind of figuring things out, or aesthetic experiences related to figuring things out. And I really feel like my life and my mindset, some of the mindsets that I fall into commonly in life, have been enriched tremendously by playing puzzle games in general. And Steven Sausage Roll, to say something about this game specifically. Good comment. I do think, I do think it's, well, first of all, he kind of went down to a relatively hard puzzle first, I guess. So in his defense, that is not the easiest puzzle to start with. But in general, I've heard a lot of people say, like, I played for 15 minutes before I solved a single puzzle. I think Jonathan Blow said something like that. So anyway, to say something about Steven Sausage Roll specifically, this game, I would say that I appreciate this game a little bit less, or like I rate this game a little bit lower now than I did when it came out. When it came out in 2016, I was less experienced with puzzle games. I'd basically just played Braid and the Witness, as far as like, well, I guess I played like Talos Principle and stuff, but as far as games that I would still consider really good today, I had basically just played Braid and the Witness before I played Steven Sausage Roll. Whereas now I've played like Snakebird, and I've played Jelly No Puzzle, and those games existed before Steven Sausage Roll, but I just hadn't played them yet. And obviously there's a long tradition of like pen and paper puzzles and stuff like that I hadn't really engaged with at that point. And so now that I have been around a little longer and explored the genre quite a bit more, Steven Sausage Roll is not like quite top of my list. Like it was like up there with The Witness for like my favorite game of all time when it came out. But there's still a lot that's really special about it. And the main thing that's really amazing about this game is how beautiful, how like elegant the system is, the rule set of this game, how the sausages and the fork and all of that stuff works. Like, you just don't see games that have so few elements and like conceits. Like, if you think about the different object types in this game, there's the sausages, there's the grills, there's like normal land, there's you and your fork, and there's ladders, and like I think that's kind of it. I think that might be it. I mean, there's also like, you enter the level, there's like the way that you enter the levels and stuff like that, but then the levels are like, and anyway, but my point is, it's an extremely minimal game. There's very few rules, and yet it just goes on and on. And this game does something that I always value, especially when it's done in a really elegant way like this, which is you learn more and more about the implications of the rules, or as you go through the game, you learn more and more about it, about how things work in the world of this game, how things work with these sausages and everything. And you get to these points where you understand something that is like So I value the learning in general. Like I really like learning interesting things and seeing the interesting implications of a system and all of that. And that's like a big part of what I like about video games in general. But there's something really particular about how that works in Steven Sausage Roll, where you have been, you've spent 2 hours with these rules and you've figured out a lot of things about them, and it feels really intricate and interesting already. And then suddenly the game reveals to you this entire layer that was beneath everything that you have done already, and that builds on top of it and adds like a whole different degree of complexity to everything. And it's like a paradigm shift in your understanding of the universe. It's like it's like those. It's a micro version of like the big scientific breakthroughs in human history, right? Like it's you experiencing that kind of thing, except you're being guided to it by the game's design. You're not like discovering the paradigm shift by yourself. Although I'll get back to that kind of a little bit with get back to that point a little bit with Cinco Paus later, which is a little bit more about discovering it yourself. But yeah, you get to experience this moment of like the ground falling out beneath you, of like this is not, there is so much more here than what I expected. And that happens like multiple times just with these super simple rules. There's sausages and you push them around and stuff. Like there is such a shocking amount that happens, a shocking number of developments and elaborations on this concept, and the game just goes to such bizarre places with all of that. By the end, it's amazing. And yeah, it's also just very challenging. As you can tell, I mean this is something that's amazing about this game. Like this is not just like horrible gameplay that we're watching right now, right? Like it might not be the best gameplay that we're watching, but this is a pretty standard like early game Steven Sausage Roll experience. Like you are in this level where there's like four spaces to stand on in the level, and you can't figure it out. Like there's nothing you can do here except the solution almost, right? And yet the solution eludes you. It's just amazing. And there's something very beautiful about that as well. Man, he really is skipping straight to the hardest ones, huh? Yeah, how much does that cover it? It's also got a really nice vibe to it and all this other stuff. But I think as far as the most fundamental things about why I like this game, that pretty much covers it. Let's see what other people. One thing I love about Steven Sausage Roll is that it doesn't waste time with tutorial levels and trusts that you can get the idea with regular levels. Totally. Yeah, I mean, these are tutorial levels in a sense, relative to what happens later. It's almost like most of the game is a tutorial in a sense. In the sense that the levels are designed to teach you specific things and build up your knowledge about the systems really quickly. But yeah, it's like in a good way. Yeah. The first levels of Baba Is You are not. I don't know. It's just the game is clearly going for something different. But yeah, I obviously prefer the Steven Sausage Roll approach as well. Yeah. Let's move on, or we're gonna be here all day. Because like I said, this is a relatively simple one, but maybe that built a foundation that I can use to now try to attack The Witness. Because The Witness is also a puzzle game. It's a much more complicated design, not just in a way. It is a much more complicated design. Let's pull up. Wait, what can I even pull up of The Witness that's not going to spoil? The Witness trailer, or like previews. Yo, Netflix The Witness 3 weeks ago. Okay, well we'll start with this and then we'll Long screenshot on loop. Yeah, we'll start with this. So, where to start with this? I've written like 100,000 words about this game before. Not available for you to read, sorry. Play at 0.25 speed. That's actually a great idea. How do I do that? This feels goofy. I'm going back. Okay. This is a good example of one thing that's really special about this game. So the witness is still minimal in a certain sense. It's like Steven's Sausage Roll. It has a very simple concept, and it explores that to all sorts of crazy frontiers. So it goes in so many different directions with it, and goes so deep in all of those directions, and then combines some of the directions and all of this stuff. But unlike Steven's Sausage Roll, the core thing of the witness is so like abstract, or like the core thing is not like a specific set of rules. It's like a thing that can contain multiple different rule sets in it. It's like a mode of interactivity almost, that like and like a general abstract idea that can contain a ton of different rule sets within it. And so this feels like compared to Steven's Sausage Roll, this feels like a lot of different games. Almost the different areas in this world, in this game, almost feel like different games sometimes. And yet they're held together by this core thing. And I like that about it. I just have to slow down. I just have to accept that I'm going to have to pause for a minute. I have a tendency to get carried away just like yapping about whatever comes to my mind, but I'm really going to try to focus on what's most important, and I think that's going to force me to slow down a little bit sometimes and just think. Well, the thing I was going to say about this spot that we're looking at right now is it's a good example of how this game goes to it's so full of ideas. Like Steven's Sausage Roll is full of ideas as well. You know, every puzzle is teaching you something slightly different that's like possible within this rule set or whatever. But the witness is like full of ideas that span a much larger space somehow. Like a major twist on the mechanics will be introduced and explored in one relatively small area. And it almost feels like it's just such a crazy, interesting idea just for that one area that you kind of feel like a lesser designer, maybe not a lesser designer, but like someone could have made a whole game about this one idea, this one twist on like how a particular type of puzzle can work. It could have been expanded to a whole game, and the witness just has so many ideas that it's content to just like dip into this possibility space and like do a one-off thing that's like the best possible thing that they could have done with this idea that could have been a whole game, right? And I'm not just I actually know that this is true. I'm not just saying this because one time I was trying to think of puzzle game ideas, like concepts for puzzle games, and I actually came up with independently, without thinking about the witness, I came up with an idea and thought it was a really, really good idea and was exploring that in my head. And then I realized this is something that the witness does for like 3 puzzles, and then like deep in some random corner of the game, it's like not central and like at all. It's just like the witness does it as like almost a throwaway thing that you see for like 15 minutes and is content to just let that be. And it was like an amazing realization for me that I had this idea and thought it was so amazing, and the witness just threw it out there. But that's not to say that the idea wasn't interesting. It's just that the witness just has so much of that, and it has room for so much of that in its design. So that's one thing that's amazing about the witness. The witness, I would say the most fundamental thing though that I love about The Witness is it goes deeper than any other game that I know of on a certain kind of communication, which I've talked about this before. I talked about it with Sylvie Games in my Game of the Year 2025 post. When you're playing this game, and you probably a prerequisite is that you're the right type of person. This probably doesn't work for everyone. It probably works to varying degrees for different people. But for me, at least, when you're in the right type of mindset with this game, you are tuning into this stream of nonverbal communication. And this is something that Jonathan Blow talked about a lot. This is a very intentional part of the design of the game. But I almost think that the way that he talks about it, like, understates it. Just, it feels, the way that the puzzles are guiding you, but also toying with you as you work toward the solutions and work through a sequence of puzzles. It's like they're trying to stay one step ahead. There's an ultimate kindness behind the puzzle design. The game wants you to understand, right? It wants you to make progress, but it also wants you to really understand in a way that requires a little bit of back and forth and antagonism in the design, right? But the game, there's always this back and forth of like, okay, I understand this thing, but somehow the game is one step ahead of me, and I need to. It will kind of mislead you in minor ways a little bit, and then expect you to get over that. And it's always playing little micro tricks on you, and macro. It's always playing all kinds of tricks on you. Yeah, it feels the reason I was saying it feels understated, the way that Jonathan Blow has talked about it, is that I feel like this game says really deep things about teaching and like education in general. And Jonathan Blow has talked about this as well. He has a talk called Video Games and the Future of Education, I think is what it's called, where he kind of lays out how potentially there are ways to use games in a future education system that would be a lot better than our current one. Or, it's not like talking about completely completely overriding all the education that we do with video games, but integrating them in a particular way. And that talk was not at all surprising to me, because I had played The Witness and thought about it, and it demonstrates very clearly, if you play this game and you understand it and you really tune into it in the right way, you will see very clearly the potential for that kind of thing. It feels like the experience of playing this game often feels like what I imagine like rich kids who have like the best private tutors in the world, like they have a private tutor who like it's like even an exaggerated version of that. Like that seems like an exaggerated scenario already, but it's a real life scenario for some people. But this isn't even an exaggerated version of that, where like, someone spent 7 years. They spent 7 years crafting this game and like perfecting every little twist in it and every little idea in it, right? And delivering each one in the perfect way to a particular type of person. And it's like you have someone who's really caring for your learning experience like that. And yeah, it's just it's an experience that you never have in real life, right? Like learning things is always a little bit of an awkward struggle, and there's the clarity behind. There's a sense of clarity that you get when playing this game. That's like, for me, it's like the ultimate fantasy, right? Like people talk about certain types of fantasy and escapism in games, but like when I play The Witness, it's like when I played The Witness for the first time, I should say, it was like that is my like opium or something. Like just this sense that everything makes a certain type of sense, and not only does everything in the world make sense, because everything in real life makes sense in a way, but like everything in the game makes sense, and someone really cared that you are able to have a good experience, like coming to understand on the route to understanding all of those things. I don't know. I feel like I'm really falling short here still of capturing what's really special about it. But yeah, there's the communication thing. Let me try to get at the communication thing from one more angle. It's like being able to communicate with the designer of the universe distilled into interactive art. That's a really nice way of putting it. I like that. Yeah, that's sort of capturing it. Don't worry, Misa, it's fine. Yeah, that's capturing at least some of what I'm trying to get at. Let me try one more angle on the communication thing. There's a magic to this nonverbal communication where you feel like everything is perfectly there's just a magic to understanding something without words when you see it. And like it has a little bit of that flavor of like when you know someone really well. It's different from this, but it has a little bit of this flavor somehow. This, you know, when you know someone really well and something happens and you just instantly, you can look over at that person and immediately be on the same page with them, and just without saying anything, there's an understanding, right? There's a recognition of something that happened and you were both on the same page about it. Like, it has a little bit of that flavor. Like you are coming to, there's someone guiding you onto the same page as that they're already on. And there are things that the designer, right? There are things that the designer understands at a very deep level. And these are very interesting and important things. And you are coming to understand that without words, and you're building up so much, such an elaborate concept of all of the things in the game, all the mechanics in the game, the rules, and all the things that the game does. Such an elaborate understanding of the game without any words. And yeah, there's a sense of there's some kind of sense of companionship or being understood that is, especially for me at the time, was really it was like I don't know I don't know how to be this vulnerable, but like it as someone who was deeply lonely for a lot of my life in a certain way, because I didn't have the people. I didn't know where to find the people who cared about things in the way that I cared about them, right? It was a profound and a very the game changed my life, right? Like it was, yeah, I don't know how I can say more than that, I guess. So yeah, if you're wondering why I don't like Ocarina of Time, it's because it's not that, right? No. What was the idea I thought of this only on 3 puzzles a game? I actually don't remember. Because I am the type of person who immediately dismisses it. It immediately dismisses the idea when I feel like it's been done before, or anything close to it has been done before, right? I think it might have been something that happens in the thing that you get an achievement for. It might have been a particular thing where there's three panels, and then there's another 3 panels. It might have been kind of something like along those lines, but I'm not actually sure if it was that. It might have been a thing in the end game of the main route where there's like a sequence of panels. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. This game is made for people like us. Yeah, it's just yeah. And maybe that's yeah. Maybe Ocarina of Time is made for people like a more common type of person, and maybe this is all revealing something negative about me. You know, you can interpret everything. You can interpret all of this in that kind of way if you choose to. But I like being me, and I think it would be nice if there were more things for people like me. Yes. What Caitlin just said. Yes, that's also what I was trying to get at for sure. Now, does that cover everything? I feel like, I mean, it definitely doesn't cover everything. I mean, to get back to touch on the thing about the ideas, just like this game has so many ideas in it. This game's overflowing with ideas in a way that is very uncommon. You know that feeling of like, I'm trying to think of a good example, but I think about a true last boss in a cave game, you know, something that is there in the game, and they put design effort into. The Joseph Anderson video. I love that video. It's like the way that I think about it is it's like the Room of games criticism. It's so bad that I can't help but like I love I love watching it. I've watched it like 4 times all the way through, and I love watching it. It's so bad that it's good to me. It's incredible. Anyway, it is sad that it has 6 million views, right? Like this has more people have watched that video than have played the game. I should probably get some more footage. Let's see the witness preview. See if we can get first official gameplay trailer, announcement trailer. Preview game. Preview and gameplay 9 years ago. Sure. What was I saying? Yeah, so this game has so many ideas in it in a way that's very uncommon. Kind of like, and there's just a certain kind of magic to something like a true last boss in a cave game because it doesn't make sense to do that. Right, it doesn't make commercial sense to put a bunch of extra design effort and art effort and all of this stuff into something that 0.001% of players are going to ever see, or at least ever experience directly themselves. Right, in an arcade context, it actually makes a little bit more sense because people can get excited about that even if they're not the ones playing it. Right, if they're watching someone play it, that can add to the experience of the game for those people. But this is kind of bizarre that this video from 9 years ago about such a popular game only has 250 views, by the way. I feel like I've discovered something. Anyway, yeah, there's I'm trying to think of a better example than that, but like, you know, like Spelunky 2 has some really crazy stuff for a very small number of players. But this game, I think, is even more extreme in that kind of way. Like, there are things in this game that must have taken weeks of effort that almost no one will see. And I'm not just talking about like, you know, there's quote unquote the challenge. I'm not just talking about that level of people will never see, because like a few percent of players have seen that, and that took a lot. That took like even more effort probably. But there are things that like probably some of the least seen things in the game, or at least if we narrow it down to like puzzles, right? Like because there's other little things that are kind of hidden in the environment that aren't really necessarily puzzles. But like if we talk about actual discrete puzzles, there are puzzles in this game that required them to build unique systems that don't show up anywhere else in the game just for this one thing out of like 700 puzzles in the game or something like that. And it's so hidden and so weird and so, you would have to be a 100% type of player in a game that doesn't really encourage you to go for 100% at all. It's just, and so the reason that I like stuff like this is because it doesn't make commercial sense to do this. Very few people do it, and because very few people do it, it just feels magical when you find that, right? It's like it's like I am experiencing something that doesn't make sense right now, and I mean, I feel like what I'm saying right now is revealing some kind of capitalist mindset poison in my brain. But like, we all have this, and it's unavoidable, right? It's unavoidable that our expectations are set by what else exists in the world. And yeah, it is just really special to go so deep into a game and still encounter something elaborate and crazy and mind-blowing. Yeah, like some of my favorite things in this game are some of the most well hidden, some of the last things that I found before like 100% quote unquote completion. Okay. From Software. Yeah. Okay, and N++ as well. That's a great point. Although it's a little bit different because they at least show off, right? They show off in a trailer, hey, this is stuff that we're adding. I mean, maybe when you boot up the game, you don't actually see that kind of stuff is in there. So maybe it is the same. But I think FromSoft is maybe a little bit better of an example. Like the fact that they added in, what's it called? When you go down to the ocean and look around and see all the trees and stuff, and there's like a dragon down there. What's it called? There's like the Great Hollow, and then there's Ash Lake or whatever in Dark Souls 1. Like, that is an amazing moment in that game, like top few moments in the game for me. There are things that I could gripe about with it, but it's an amazing moment in the game for me, and it just doesn't make sense to do that, right? The way that you get there is completely it's completely absurd that they would ever. You can't expect anyone to ever. You can't expect anyone to ever find that. Yeah, even the painted world a little bit. Although I think a lot more people do find the painted world, but you can't ever expect people to find Ash Lake. You can't expect any particular player to find it. And yet they put so much art effort into it and some amount of design effort into it. And yeah, there's just a feeling of magic as you're descending further and further down this level, and you're like, what is going on? And I think even more so, you know, you can convince yourself as you're descending through that area, like, oh, maybe this is like a normal area later in the game that I'm going to loop back to another way. You know, maybe this leads other places, or other places lead to here. And so it's not quite as like unique, not quite as special in a certain sense as I'm thinking it is. But then slowly it dawns on you that no, this must be a special thing. This must be a only accessible from this one bizarre, unbelievable route. Like, why is this like this? Like, this is just yeah. I guess this gets back to stuff that I'll talk about with like Rain World when I get to like Rain World, and what else is on here? Infernium, Outer Wilds. Like, those are more kind of adventure focused games. And yeah, there's just something about the sense of being on an adventure. Truly. You know, a lot of games sell themselves as adventure games, but fall short of really feeling like an adventure to me. Again, we can talk about OOT here. Like, OOT, part of the reason why I say it's a great game for kids is that I think it works a lot better when you're a kid. First of all, your brain just works differently when you're a kid in terms of like getting immersed in something like that. And I don't think that's just like a skill issue, like you should learn how to get back into that mindset as an adult. I think that's kind of an unavoidable, natural, healthy thing. And so when you play, but it's not just that. It's I would say even more than that. It's about the reason why it's harder to enjoy OOT as an adult is largely that you have played other games. Well, I mean, look, there's a difference between being an adult and being experienced with games, but you know, it's harder to enjoy OOT when you are more experienced with games because you have internalized the patterns of so many other games, the design patterns of so many other games and how games work, and you have expectations of what a video game can be. And the game doesn't feel infinite and real in the same way after you've played a few games. The sweet spot for playing OOT and really loving it is like you've played like 3 games before maybe. You know, you're 8 years old and you've played a few games before maybe. And then it does feel magical and real and you get immersed and you're confused often despite the fact that the game is like really easy for an experienced adult. You're as a kid, you're confused often and you're backtracking a lot and you're thinking about what would make sense within this actual world in a way that just can't happen to me anymore when I play a game like OOT. And I think that feeling starts to drop off pretty rapidly, actually, when you're not 8 years old and haven't played a video game before, you know? Anyway, it's just trying not to be negative about OOT. But again, I like OOT as a kid's game. But yeah, this stuff that works for me as an adult who still wants to feel like I'm on an adventure in some sense sometimes is stuff where there has to be a certain amount that's unexpected. There has to be a certain amount that there's surprise goes a long way toward creating an adventure. And that's why Demon's Souls, right, is such a great adventure game, especially at the time it was. I mean, a lot of the stuff that was surprising about Demon's Souls at the time has now been replicated, has now been reused in Dark Souls and stuff. But especially at the time, that was such a bizarre game in so many different ways, and that just allows for you to it makes it feel like an adventure, right? And it's not, can something really be an adventure if you can expect everything that's going to happen? I think surprise is a core thing about an adventure. There's a lot of other stuff about it, but yeah. And so yeah, The Witness, despite not, I would say mostly it's not an adventure game, not as much as Rain World or Outer Wilds or Infernium, but despite that, it has enough surprise to generate those kinds of feelings sometimes and to get you immersed in the game. I mean, I played The Witness obsessively. I played it obsessively for like 3 days or whatever until I finished it. I devoured that game. Like I said, it's like opium for me. Okay. Hopefully all of my hopefully not all the other games will be this long, because this has already been like an hour. Oh my god. Okay. I don't think it will be. I don't think all the other ones will be, the explanations will be this long, because I'm covering ground that applies to the other games as well, right? That said, SpyParty is quite different from either of the games I've talked about so far. Okay, let's try to pull up some SpyParty. SpyParty. I don't really know what to search because I don't really want competitive. I don't really want Donkey either, though. Does this have the good art? Sure. 2 hours ago, no views. Look, it's still... Game has not been updated in forever, despite the fact that it really needs some updates. And yet it still has an active competitive scene. Yo, warning track. This guy is so cracked at nerds. Anyway. Cinco Paus is going to have to be its own stream. I already feel like I'm skipping so much about what makes The Witness special, but there's only so much I can do within one stream. Yeah, I'm just giving up on saying any more about The Witness because this is taking too long. Okay, let's I want to get back into taking my time mode though. So SpyParty is a game where it's an asymmetric multiplayer game where one person is the spy and the other person is the sniper, and you alternate rounds where each player is each role. And this game is like the pinnacle maybe of strangeness in the way that I meant in that in that video about what makes a game great, where I talk about a certain type of strangeness. There is just nothing that does what this game does. Like the tension. I'm feeling the tension. If you've never played the game, you're not on the same page. You're not feeling it at all right now. But that was a very tense moment. It's a game. Okay, so I love games like Mafia. Like games about reading. That they're really about reading other people's minds, right? Like guessing what other people are thinking, trying to understand their behavior and things like that. SpyParty, I feel like, is the ultimate game about human behavior. The spy basically is trying to blend in. Every other character you see on screen right now is an NPC, except for this lady being controlled by the spy. And so you are trying to blend in. You're trying to blend in and not make the sniper suspicious of what you're doing. But because if the sniper figures out who you are, which character you are controlling, they can just shoot you immediately and the round's over and they win. So you are trying to blend in while also accomplishing certain goals that have certain tells. If the sniper is paying the right kind of attention, they will be able to notice those tells, right? And so it's a game about mind reading in like a lot of different ways where so the sniper just shot the wrong guy and lost the round. But it's really hard to explain the game. Yeah, you were trying to be an NPC. And how's it going, Cube? One definition of a good game is something that does something well that no other game does. Yeah, totally. And I'm trying to explain what that thing is for SpyParty, but it's very hard because there's a lot to it. And no way, did he just give away? That's crazy. I don't really know. I haven't watched enough high level SpyParty to really appreciate it. I honestly have not played. You could call me a poser for putting SpyParty in my 3x3 or whatever in my top 10 games, and I would not be offended. I have played enough of it. I played like 25 hours of it or something. I played enough of it that I appreciate what's great about it, and I see that it is a really important game. And it's such an important game to understand. I feel like it's relevant all the time in interesting game design discussions and things like that. Just because it does so many things uniquely well. But I haven't played enough of it to fully understand the depths of it. I've seen hints of it. Like, okay, the depth of this game is just in such bizarre places compared to any other game. For example, you choose your character at the start of every round, And you can choose whatever character you want, and the characters behave like almost exactly the same. Like I've played the game for 25 hours and I almost haven't noticed a difference. Like I've sort of noticed some differences between characters, but it's almost entirely visual differences. But those visual differences actually matter a lot, because if your character is bigger, then that creates a bigger tell for certain things that you might be doing. Like if this guy, well, I don't know specific examples actually. So I don't want to say something that's not right. But like, if this were the guy in the wheelchair instead of this big tall guy, he would be significantly shorter, and so especially on certain maps where the sniper's view is obscured partially in certain places, like the spy might have intentionally chosen the wheelchair guy so that he could get away with certain things. And so if you know that you're on a certain map, you should be suspicious that you should be extra suspicious of certain characters because of how they look. And there's also the extreme example of this is the twins. There's two characters that look exactly the same, basically, or almost. And that makes it very, very difficult for the sniper if the spy is playing as one of the twins. But see, he's looking back and forth between the twins right now. But because it is easier to get away with certain things as certain characters, the sniper has to be more suspicious of those characters if they're good at the game, and that makes it harder for you in a certain way as the spy if you choose those characters, right? And so there's these crazy like multi-level mind games and stuff. I can't really capture it, but the depth of this game is in such bizarre places. Like what the characters actually look like matters so much, and how exactly you move matters so much. Someone mentioned Angel Game in a Matthew Matosa stream. I want to watch that Welcome Tour stream, because I don't think I'm going to buy a Switch 2 anytime soon. So I want to kind of see what's up with that game. And I just enjoy his streams in general. So there's a little bit of that in TF2, right? But this game is like all about stuff like that, and it's all about and by the way, someone said what did someone say? Wait, what? Oh yeah, damn, I'd be good at this. I'm an NPC, which is a funny joke, but also is not really true because it's not about, if you behave exactly like the NPCs, you will not accomplish any of your goals and you will lose every round as spy, right? It's about, you have to understand the NPCs at such a deep level while very much not being one of them. And yeah, there's the set of mechanics in this game is just perfect. It's the most for being the least complete game on this list in a certain sense. Like there's, he never came back to the game and finished up like the UI and the matchmaking system and all of these things. Like you still have to use like a old school lobby system and all of this. Despite all of that, the core design is like so tight. It's like one of the best designed core gameplay loops of any game on my list. It's another thing that this game does uniquely well is, and that I like a lot, is attention splitting, right? Like I'm now my brain has now been poisoned by Mark the Electric Underground's Pragmata review, which I watched the first few minutes of today. And where he's a little bit, I don't really disagree with a lot of what I heard, honestly, but the general perspective of that review seems kind of dismissive of the very idea of a game that's about managing your attention, right? But to me, attention management is one of the most interesting things in games, one of the most interesting kind of types of dynamics and like categories of gameplay, right? And I talked about this with Sectori when that came out. Like a big part of what I like about Sectori is like you're just thinking about all these different layers at one time, right? There's different timers that you're watching, and like you're maintaining your strike chain, but you're also like you know, I don't know. I can't do a good job of describing sectory, but I've talked about that before. But like, you know, something like StarCraft is like a classic example of an attention splitting game. Like you're trying to scout, and you're trying to pay attention to what your opponent's doing, and you're trying to build up your stuff, and you're trying to move your units around all at the same time. And you can't do that all at the same time, right? It doesn't matter if you have 500 actions per minute. You just cannot do that perfectly all at the same time. It's just not possible. So you have to and you can't pay attention to all of those things at the same time, right? And so you have to make these decisions. Being good at StarCraft is largely about being good at managing your attention and fluidly switching between different things that you're paying attention to at different times. And always being ready, always having these things just below the surface of your attention somehow, so that they can pop up if you get some particular signal that, oh, now I really need to pay attention to this, that you can react quickly and get right on that, instead of like being tunnel visioned on building your base or whatever. Yeah. So that's an interesting and a very interesting category of game to me, and I think SpyParty does that super well from different angles. Like especially when you're the sniper, it's about stretching your brain and trying to hold all of this different stuff that you need to pay attention to, right? Like you're watching 15 people or whatever, however many NPCs are in this room. You're watching 15 people at the same time and trying to pay attention to all the things that they're doing. You just can't do that. And so the strategy of this game, it's a deeply strategic game, but the way that you express that strategy is not through like normal moves, like on a chessboard or whatever. The way that you express the strategy in a game like SpyParty is you manage your attention differently, right? You change what you're paying attention to, and that gets very, very detailed and very complicated, the way that you were managing your attention, and it's very interesting. And I think compared to something like Sectori or something like StarCraft or something like NERTS, there's something about the flavor of the attention management in SpyParty that I particularly like. I think because the game is slow paced in a certain way, you know, the movement is all very slow, and it doesn't feel frantic, like most action-y games. I think because of that, it's like you're steeping in the experience of managing your attention more or differently somehow. I don't know exactly how to explain it, but yeah, it is very special in that way. And when you're the spy, so I said it's a lot about mind reading and this back and forth of psyching out your opponent and all of this stuff. When you're the spy, you have to like think about all this from the other end, right? Like imagine what the sniper is thinking about right now, and you can see the sniper's laser to see more or less where they're looking at any given time, and you can use that, and also just use your imagination and look at what all the other NPCs are doing, and think about what you would be thinking about if you were the sniper right now, and respond to that and behave according to that, right? It's just so crazy deep. Like that is an infinitely deep problem, right? So yeah. Let me answer this question. So the only thing the sniper does is pick one target, no abilities or hints or ways to evoke the spy or anything. There's no interaction with the spy except for the spy sees your laser. However, you can mark NPCs as like, I'm not going to pay attention. Like, you know, you can rule them out, right? And it like darkens You can see, or you can highlight and low light is what it's called. So the ones with the white border around them are highlighted, like he's paying special attention to them, and he just highlighted the spy. And then the darkened ones are like ruled out, or more or less ruled out enough. As the sniper, do you intentionally look at someone off to the side of someone you suspect so that they don't think you suspect them? Often, yes. Yes. All kinds of stuff like that. More stuff like that than you can possibly imagine. More like multi-layered, like crazy psych outs like that in more areas than you could possibly imagine. It's an amazing game. It's an amazing game. I think I've probably sold it well enough, but one other thing that I wanted to specifically call out, because it's also relevant to The Witness, and it's also something I was saying on the Discord just this morning. I really like to get lost in a game. That's not the right way to start this topic. No matter how demanding a game, I like games that are very demanding, right? And if a game is too demanding, it will tire you out, and you will have to take very frequent breaks. And I love to get completely absorbed in a game. I don't need that every time. A game does not need that. And in fact, my favorite game of all time is not like this at all. But I do appreciate a game like The Witness that, for me at least, I can play all day long. I literally binged it for 3 full days straight, like 12 hours a day when it came out. And the most games that are demanding enough to be interesting, in order for a game to be interesting, it usually has to ask something of you. It has to ask you to do difficult things or think hard or whatever, to use some amount of brain power in a particular way. No matter how demanding a game is, you will be able to play it for longer stretches without closing the game and taking a break if it has kind of built-in breaks in some sense. And this game, because it's an asymmetric multiplayer game where it feels very different to play spy versus how it feels to play sniper, it has a built-in break where the part of your brain that you're using most intensely, the part of your brain that you're really draining when you're playing sniper, gets a little bit of a recharge while you play spy, and vice versa. Especially playing sniper, it can be very draining if you're really playing at a high level and trying really hard. So nice. I am trash at both. I'm trash at both spy and sniper. Yeah, it's this isn't really just about the opium factor. It's also about like in a game like The Witness, for example, it really helps to play it, to binge it. You can appreciate some types of games you can appreciate more if you binge them, because you're going to remember, things are going to stay fresher in your mind, right? Like The Witness, something that you saw 1 hour into the game on this one corner of the island can reappear, or there can be some kind of subtle callback to that thing that even if you don't need to remember that thing from hour 1, you will appreciate the game more if you do recognize that connection, right? There are all kinds of connections in that game. And yeah, I really think it helps to play that game like on a vacation when you can play it a lot every day rather than just playing an hour a day for a couple months or whatever. So yeah, this allows for that type of thing as well. And yeah, obviously SpyParty is a little bit different in that regard. It's not that kind of game, but still I value that it doesn't wear on you. Playing the game doesn't wear on you the way that it would if it were just the sniper side or just the spy side, especially just the sniper side. And yet this does not at all have the problem that people often complain about where the game is not cohesive. Okay, like I was saying on the Discord earlier today, like Zachtronics Solitaire is like the classic example of this. It's a way to take a break from the main game, which can be very draining, while still being inside of the game. And you could argue that a mini game like Zachtronics Solitaire or certain other things that fulfill these kind of requirements. I mean, like AAA games cutscenes are kind of attacking this kind of problem, right? Like you're not going to be as likely to feel like you need to take a break, because if the game gives you a cutscene every once in a while to give you a different type of thing to engage with. Now, I don't like that solution, right? I don't like that solution very much. And yeah, even like the Zachtronics Solitaire, which I do like, people will complain about that, or you could at least imagine someone complaining about that because it's not cohesive, like, right? It doesn't cohere with the rest of the game. It's this, you could think of it as an added on thing that's not really that related to the core gameplay, and you could criticize it for that reason. SpyParty is not at all like that, right? It's everything. It's not like playing Spy is a completely different thing from playing Sniper. Like I was saying, you have to think about what it's like to play Sniper while you're playing Spy and vice versa. Everything is really elaborately connected to each other because it's so much about mind reading. So I think that more or less, hopefully that more or less covers SpyParty. It only took me 24 minutes or so. Yeah, amazing game. I need to play it more. We should maybe get some sessions going in the Discord actually sometime. Okay, three down, 6 to go. Need some more water, man. Six to go, and then we have to figure out what the 10th one is going to be. If the distraction lives in the same brain space, the distraction is less egregious. Yes, I would agree with that. And then that's a problem though, because that makes it maybe more difficult to give your brain a break, right? But I think the solitaire thing fulfills that. Like, it's a different type of thinking, even though they both fall into the thinky games umbrella or whatever. But yeah, I was gonna say about the Witness as well, that the Witness does, I can't say much without spoilers, but there are different types of gameplay in that game, different major categories of gameplay, and you can absolutely and should take a break from one type of gameplay and do another thing. Also, just different areas in the core gameplay like feel very different from each other. Okay, and stretch different brain areas. Okay. Outer Wilds, I feel like I don't need to explain as much, maybe. I feel like everyone understands why Outer Wilds is really good. Am I the only person who uses the word long play in 2026, by the way? Yeah, it's a really... So I've talked about exploration before, and how, unlike something like a puzzle game, which is, right, a puzzle game is laser focusing on one thing, like I said earlier with Steven Sausage Roll, is laser focusing on one thing that it wants you to learn at a given time. And that's very cool. You can learn very quickly that way. You can build up a really elaborate understanding of a complex system within a 30-hour game like Steven Sausage Roll. However, going kind of in the opposite direction is also good, where the puzzles are not only or it's not even about the puzzles being focused or unfocused. It's about the puzzles aren't really clearly signaled as puzzles. You're just walking around a world. You're moving around a world, and you are looking at it, and you are interpreting what you see. And a great exploration game to me is about, it's about it's testing you. If you want to think about it as testing you, which I don't necessarily, but if you want to think about it as that, it's testing you on what you think matters, right? It's whereas a puzzle game, it's showing you this is a thing that matters. This specific, whatever is happening in this specific tiny state space right here of this puzzle is what matters. An exploration game's like, here's a universe. You have to figure out what matters about this. And this is another kind of attention management, I guess you could say. But yeah, it's about being, it leans into player curiosity, right? It wants you to trust that there's something interesting to find here and go find it. And yeah, there's just something different about the experience of what I call an exploration game, something like this. Especially like this kind of detective-y flavor of exploration game. You know that there are things to figure out and there are clues in the environment that will help you figure things out, but you don't really know how they connect, and you have to make those connections for yourself. Now, I will say the ship log in Outer Wilds is quite a concession to popular taste and to less experienced players. The ship log gives a lot away if you use the ship log a lot. However, you can disable the map part of the ship log, the mind map, whatever you call it, whatever it's called in the game, and that makes it a lot more. That makes it more so that you have to make the connections yourself, and you can even ignore the ship log, which I recommend doing as much as possible, and that way it doesn't really tell you what's important as much, right? Like, you have to notice things and recognize that they are important and recognize what it is that you are looking at. Whereas if you use the ship log too much, you can kind of just walk around, see things, not really understand the significance of them, go back to the ship log and then read a statement that describes what you saw in such a way that it is likely to kind of point you toward what its significance is, right? That's not how I like playing these games. It's not how I played Outer Wilds. It's not how I enjoyed it. So yeah, the game guides you enough without that through stuff like this dialogue. Anyway, it's a really, it's strange in that way that I was talking about, where like this universe works in a very specific way. They have designed this tiny universe where every planet has interesting things about it that are alien to us, things surprising things to discover and come to understand, right? And yeah. It's I'm usually not a big story in games person, right? I think usually it doesn't work very well, story in games. Outer Wilds makes story work in tandem with gameplay better than any other game that I know of, I think. The gameplay does not feel compromised and the story does not feel compromised. And that's an extremely rare and interesting thing. And I do think there's a benefit to doing that if you can pull it off. I'm not one of these people who's like, oh, it should have just been if it's a story thing, it should have just been a movie or whatever. Like no, when the gameplay and the story and the writing harmonize, it's there are really special things that can come out of that. Yeah, I maybe I'm just not maybe I'm just not prepared to rhapsodize about Outer Wilds in the way that I have about these other games. But it's really well designed in the sense of how the whole universe is constructed and how every mechanic supports every other mechanic and everything about the story supports the mechanics and all of that. And it's just amazing to go through that process of slowly discovering, and it has that feeling of adventure that I was talking about, where things are genuinely surprising. You're constantly encountering things that are genuinely surprising. You're exploring all of these alien worlds, and the game makes you actually care about that exploration and the things that you're seeing and all of that. Maybe that covers it. Again, most people probably already know what's great about Outer Wilds. I will say, this will maybe help explain what I like about it. The DLC, I actually like the DLC more than the base game. I think it's even more strange and surprising and all of that. It also kind of leans away from the tutorial-ness a little bit. It doesn't spell things out quite as much. I also just love the art direction and the vibe of it more than anything in the base game, I think. And just the things, it has that thing that I was talking about with Steven's Sausage Roll, where you are understanding what's going on, and these big layers get peeled back, and you're understanding, and suddenly you're like, nothing works the way that I thought it did, and yet this totally makes sense with what I knew before. It's just amazing. It's just amazing. Yeah. I think that'll do. Okay. Cinco Paus. So Cinco Paus is my favorite game of all time. This is not an ordered list. If you're curious, I would say that Cinco Paus and The Witness are my two favorites, and then there's kind of a power gap. I don't know. I could see SpyParty shooting up there if I played another couple hundred hours or whatever. Yeah, Cinco Paus. How do I even start? Okay, let's just say some things about it. It is it's a strategy game. Okay, let me pull up some. I'm not gonna pull up my gameplay, because that you're gonna be looking at a static screen for a really long time. I guess this is. We should pull up Gates. Wait, we actually should do that. Here's Gate playing Cinco Paus. Okay. I recommend this series, by the way. I didn't comment on it because I'm not a good YouTube viewer. But I often recommend this series to people because the game is very hard to get into. The game is very, very hard to get into. And it is much more important to get over that hump and start to understand what's amazing about it than it is to have a quote-unquote perfect blind experience where you figure out everything for yourself. There's enough to figure out in this game to go around, okay? So if you have tried to get into this game and bounced off of it, maybe try again first. But I would then say, if you're still frustrated, try watching this series, because Gate talks about hearing his thought process is very helpful, because he has the right mindset for appreciating a game like this and for getting over the hump quickly. I guess I'll just leave it at that. I think that this video, watching this video, can convey the right mindset. Anyway, it is, immaculately designed is a good phrase. It's just incredible. So the game is pretty complicated compared to most games. Although compared to it's inspired by classic roguelikes like NetHack and whatever. compared to those games, it is not complicated in that kind of way at all. But it's, I think, deeper than those games, or at least effectively deeper than those games, despite having way fewer mechanics than those types of games often do. There are 50 spells in the game that kind of makes up the core of the depth of the game. There's more that you will discover as you get deeper into the game, which I will leave you to discover for yourself. But the core of the game is these 50 spells, and so you can think of that as 50 mechanics, right? And then there's basic rules about how you can move, and there's locks and keys, and there's a few items. There's 5 items. It's not really that many rules, and what's happening on the screen always looks so minimal, and the way that enemies behave is so minimal, and all of this stuff. And yet, it is the deepest strategy game ever made, bar none. It is, as far as the depth that you can actually access, right? Like there's something like theoretical depth versus practical depth of a game, where theoretically NetHack has a lot of depth or like Dwarf Fortress, like, if the really deep part of the game happens 30 minutes in to a run, and 50% of your runs realistically are just going to die in the early game, then that's like 45 minutes. You're spending 45 minutes on the not deep part of the game every time you're trying to get to the part that has more for you to discover, right? After a certain amount of play that you get into that type of situation. So that would be less practical depth, even if there's a lot of theoretical depth in a game like that. Cinco Paus, first of all, it does the opposite thing of that. It does a very strange thing where the deepest part of the game, and this seems like it would be a bad thing. I would have if I had heard this before playing it, I probably would have thought that this is a bad thing, but it's actually a great thing about this game. The deepest part of the game is level 1. The very first room of the run is where the depth peaks. And a run is very long. A run is at least a few hours long for a complete run. And it's just very unusual. It goes against what we expect from games. But I think it's a great thing, because in a roguelike, especially a very difficult roguelike, you are spending the most time in the early game. And you might think, oh, well, that's like going to be underwhelming. Like if the early game is really deep, and then the late game it gets like shallower, like that's weird. You don't want that. But shallower doesn't mean worse. And a run can ramp up. A game can ramp up as it goes on, even if there's less depth. Like, this game ramps up in other ways. Like, unique things start to develop that you haven't seen in like, how do I say this? That's misleading relative to what I was just saying. And it's also, well, it's not that it's not true, but it's hard. It's confusing to talk about this without being able to say the specific things that I'm talking about, but it's kind of spoilery. But yeah, things that, yeah, I'll just say that the run develops in a certain way, and is still very deep. I'm not going to say that the late game is shallow. It's very, very far from shallow. You can play thousands of hours of the game and still not come close to mastering late game. But I do think it's good that the early game is even deeper than that, right? Anyway, that's all kind of an aside. It's something that this game does uniquely well, I think, but it's all kind of an aside. We're dying in the tutorial. This is amazing. So, but yeah, what I was saying is that it has a lot of effective or practical depth, and the early game, even for, no matter what part of the game you're at, there are interesting decisions, there are interesting things to notice, interesting strategies that are relevant all the time that you could be figuring out. There's almost no point. It would be hard to enter a room in Cinco Paus and for it would be hard to find a scenario where you enter a room in Cinco Paus and there isn't something new that you could notice and learn. Usually there are many, many things that you could learn by thinking about just that one room. It's just astounding how much depth there is to this game. And yeah, like if you think about the 50 mechanics, this is maybe just another way of saying what I was just saying about depth, but like if you think about the 50 mechanics and you kind of draw a network of like all the ways that those mechanics affect each other and interact with each other in interesting ways, like that's kind of what depth is, right? It's kind of the density of that network. That's maybe not exactly true, but something like that is desirable at least, right? And Cinco Paus has the densest, like, I'm not just talking about mechanics interacting with each other like at all and like work, like, you know, if you use this thing along with this thing, it does something that makes sense. I'm talking about it does something that is interesting and different from any other thing in the game and has strategic implications that bear on other things. Like it's like the edge of this on this graph of the 50 things and how they connect with each other. The edge is its own thing that can then connect to like a bunch of other things, and then the edges between those I don't know if this makes sense at all. I feel like I need to draw this, but like the edges then create more lines or more edges between the edges and other edges. It's like I don't know. I feel like I have to try to explain it, like try to explain this visually at some point. But my point is, it has so much of this thing that I was talking about in Steven's Sausage Roll, where you get to these deeper layers, you realize something about how a mechanic works with some other mechanic or whatever, and that reveals a whole new layer that's relevant very often. It's not just some weird corner of the universe. It's like, this has so many implications, and like, sometimes it's that thing itself that has implications, and other times it's like, whoa, realizing this thing, there's kind of parallels to that. Now that I've realized this, it's easier for me to notice other things that are kind of similar to that, but different and have their own crazy implications. And slowly you just uncover this completely insane, massive, sprawling thing that is this game. And it just keeps going for forever. Yeah, it does that thing more elegantly and more deeply and more mind-blowingly than any other game, I think. The one thing that maybe helps capture what I think is so special about this game is that the strategies, a lot of strategy games are kind of operating, a lot of strategy games that are as dense and deep as Cinco Paus. You think about something like chess. It's kind of all about like spatial relationships. There is a sameness to the strategies in chess. I don't want to be dismissive of chess, but compared to chess, something that I particularly like about Cinco Paus is like, it doesn't just have like, oh, I'm going to move from here to here, and there are different ways to do that, and you can go really deep on how good you can be at like seeing all the different ways you can move from here to here. It's more about different types of mechanics that are like completely different from each other, right? And that makes the experience of learning the game and getting better at the game and all of that, it makes it much more, it makes it feel more like like science, right? Like I kind of touched on this with other games that I was talking about, but something that I really liked about speedrunning Majora's Mask, and you get this from like if you watch Pan and Koic videos and stuff like that, of the Mario 64 A button challenge guy. It's really satisfying to, but here's the thing, I don't get it as much from those videos because I appreciate it more when I really immerse myself in it and I peel back those layers for myself to a large degree, right? And yeah, the process of discovering that stuff and the process of slowly coming to understand more and more is what I value. It's not just the understanding. And yeah, a big part of the appeal of like speedrunning for me and stuff like that is the way that you come to see the game as a program. You see it as this programmed universe that like has all of these weird implications that are like, you see it as a different world that you can come to understand in the same way that physicists and scientists throughout history slowly came to understand the real world, and you can go through that process, and I love that process. Yeah, and I think it's beautiful to uncover more about the game than the designer knew was there. Although in Cinco Paus, he really knew a lot. He really thought about some deep stuff, way deeper than what most designers would ever consider or be able to think about. But even beyond that, you can keep going to the point where weird like intricacies of how something is programmed really starts to matter. And yeah, I love that. It just keeps going, and it rewards you for playing very slowly, which leans into the strategy, the really thinking and coming up with genuinely new strategies rather than just tactics, right? Like a lot of quote unquote strategy games, turn-based strategy games, you could say are more about tactics. You're spending most of your time executing a strategy or a set of strategies that you came up with ahead of time or before, or, that you've developed already. Cinco Paus, it wants you, and it allows you, and I would say when you're playing the game the way you really should be playing it, it lets you really develop new strategies all the time. You really should be sitting and staring at these rooms and thinking about what is new that I could do here. What is possible? One thing that's funny about this game is that people think that it's the shallowest game ever when they see it, right? Because, the enemies are just walking toward you. It's got this bump combat thing, right? People think it's like bump combat, like the Ys series or however you pronounce it, Ys. People think it's like super simple. And part of why is because the depth is in a different place compared to most games. And this is something that I really like about it. Compared to most good games. So here I'll do a little bit of negativity here. I don't like character action games in general. There are some that I think there are some that I have enjoyed to some degree. There are probably some that I would even say are good games, actually. But in general, the tendency for character action games, we're talking like Devil May Cry, we're talking Bayonetta, we're talking stuff like that. The tendency is for them to give the player too much of a, it's like they're too concerned with the player having a cool move set, right? And so there's not enough balance. Like the enemies do interesting things as well, but because you have such a crazy move set, it ends up being that, first of all, the move set doesn't tend to be tuned well, so that it ends up that there are optimal strategies. There are kind of degenerate strategies that make some parts of the moveset not really necessary, and that's kind of ugly. And I don't know. There's a lot about character action games that I find ugly generally. But the main point I'm trying to make that's relevant to Cinco Paus is that in Cinco Paus, all of the depth is in your moveset, which is very, very unusual. You know, most good games, they bring out depth by limiting you, kind of somewhat counterintuitively. They bring out depth by limiting what you can do. Like, think about Ghosts and Goblins. Like, that's a very deep action platformer, I would say. You have such it's a deeper platformer than Mario, right? If you think about how Mario's jump works compared to Arthur's jump in Ghosts and Goblins, Arthur's jump is like way more limited. Like, you have no air control. You have 3 different jumps you can do, right? You can jump all the way left, you can jump all the way right, and you can jump straight up. And Mario, there are infinite jumps you can do almost. Like, you have so much air control and fine, your momentum and all that stuff matters, and all this, how fast you're going into the jump and all that stuff matters. You can probably like change the jump height as well. You have all this control to like dodge stuff in midair, and because of that, the game is actually counterintuitively shallower, because you don't have to think about your jump ahead of time. You don't have to understand the enemies enough to anticipate what's going to happen when you're in midair, right? Because once you're in midair, you can just cut your jump back in midair if something happens. You can react at the last second, you can adjust at the last second to land on top of an enemy. Whereas in something like Ghosts and Goblins, because you have so much less control, you have to think ahead so much more, and you have to understand the game so much more. You have to understand the enemies so much more, and what they can do, what they're going to do. So Cinco Paus goes in the opposite direction. It manages to make a game that is incredibly deep and interesting by... It's incredibly deep and interesting with all the depth on the player side, the player moveset side. In this game, you have a crazy player moveset, and the enemies do basically nothing except walk up to you. But it's not trivial. Nothing is trivial because of the way that moveset is limited, right? Your moveset changes every round, every Jogo, and you don't know what that moveset is at the beginning, and you have to play in such a way that helps you discover what the moveset even is. And there's this, really the first thing I should have said, the core of what's interesting about Cinco Paus is the tension between identification and utilization of your wands, okay? You don't understand what your wands do at the beginning of every round, and you slowly come to understand more of what they do. But you can only learn what they do by using them in such a way that it would trigger certain effects if those effects were there, right? And so there's strategy around what you are trying to potentially trigger. There's all this uncertainty, and the game is about playing with uncertainty, and it's about managing uncertainty and reining in the randomness in a way that is amazing and interesting and different from most games. Yeah, I did a good job explaining some of the games, but I didn't should have explained Cinco Paus a little bit more up front. It's just hard, man. It's just hard doing what I'm trying to do here. So, yeah, it's about reining in the randomness. It's about, you're a magician in this game, right? And you feel like you are doing crazy dark magic, the things that you are thinking about to make this game manageable. The theme fits. I will just say that. The theme fits. You're thinking about so much that is unseen, right? And there's a certain kind of magic to that. I don't know. I could talk about this game all day, but I feel like I'm kind of gave you the gist of it. Yeah. If you want more about that, I recommend Frank Lance's review recommendation, whatever, of the game that you can find somewhere. And yeah, I recommend just trying the game and watching this series if you get stuck, feel frustrated, or just talking on the Discord. Also, we have a Discord here where we talk about games all the time, and there is a channel dedicated to Cinco Paus. There's at least one channel dedicated to Cinco Paus, and you can talk about the game with other people who are also trying to get into it. Okay, let's call that good for Cinco Paus. Okay, Angel Game. This one's tough. This is another one that people look at and they say this is one of your favorite games of all time. So Angel Game. Actually, let me. And Angel Dances and Sparks on Fire. I want to specifically find. Oh yeah, I knew this. I knew I linked this. So this is Don. Friend of the stream, Don. This is a previous world record. I'll switch. Also friend of the stream, River. How? This is Don's previous world record in Angel Game. So this is Angel Game. It's a very, very simple avoidance game. You know, you could think about it as sort of in the lineage of shmups, arcade shmups, cave, Toplan, Psycho, etc. There's also a long history of like I Want to Be the Guy fan games that do different type of stuff with avoidance in more of a platformer mode. Oh my god. You can see what the game is, sort of. In a sense, you have seen the entire game already. And I think that leads to a lot of people dismissing it too quickly. Because this is an incredibly deep game. This is an incredibly deep game. The first thing I want to say is, okay. In general, I really prefer procedurally generated levels in games that are like replayable, right? If a game is supposed to be infinitely replayable, why would I want to do the same level, to play through the same level layout and same enemy spawns over and over again? Like, that's just decreasing the depth of the game, right? Compared to having an interesting procedural generation system where you actually have to react to things, and you get different situations every time. It also adds a layer of like reaction to something new rather than just executing a route. And then also you get more depth. It's not just that you get a different situation every time, it's that you get more strategic depth and depth in general out of the procedural generation system itself. Like if you look into how Tetris piece spawning, how it chooses what piece it's going to give you next, high-level Tetris players are thinking about that. That is a layer of the strategy of the game, and they're making different decisions in how they place the current pieces because of what pieces they anticipate coming next. So that's additional depth that's coming just from the fact that it's procedurally generated, not even from the variety of situations that the procedural generation gives you. So why would I not prefer that, right? And yet so few action games. And by the way, this is something that doesn't apply to all types of games. Like I said, I like puzzle games. That's like the opposite of procedural generation. There are different things that games do well, and I like a lot of those different things. So I'm not saying that The Witness would be better if it were procedurally generated or whatever. But yeah, and there are so few games, and maybe this is because it's disorienting to newer players. It's something that more advanced players can appreciate more when... I think a lot of what's good about procedural generation in replayable games, it's not so good, or at least it doesn't really matter. Probably it's actually a negative when you're first starting out and you're not very comfortable with the game and you're not very comfortable with the genre or whatever. Like I think it's probably disorienting and actually bad for here's the current world record if you thought that was crazy. Not that one. Hello, thank you for gifting a sub. Really appreciate that. Yeah. So the fact that people are so amazed by these times, I mean, this is an amazing time, but the fact that people are amazed even by like the 200 seconds, people are consistently amazed when I recommend the game and then they find out that I have like a 200 or whatever. Like, the fact that people are that amazed by that makes me think that it's kind of a skill issue, right? like that most people really struggle to get good enough at the game to see what I see in it. And that's fine. I'm trying to just be real about that, right? I'm trying to just understand. Yeah. So, but my point is the procedural generation does let the game go way deeper than something like a typical arcade shmup or a typical I Want to Be the Guy avoidance fan game. The fact, and similar to related to what I was saying about Cinco Paus, how the deepest part of the game is the very beginning of the game. This game has something similar going on. Every part of this game is the very beginning of the game and is the deepest part. Every part of the game is the deepest part of the game because every part of this game is the same, right? The game is doing the exact same thing all the time. It is randomly generating these bullets that you have to dodge. And you're going up and down and you're routing through the bullets. So that is rare and good also. It really bothers me when I have mastered when I master the first couple stages of an arcade game within the first few attempts of it, and then I have to keep playing them over and over again or get into a practice mode or whatever. I like just being able to play the game. And always be at the part where I actually want to be at. So yeah, I value that a lot. But to talk about what I see in this game that I think a lot of people don't so much see. The first thing to understand is, so this is a game about routing, right? And it's about spacing and positioning and tracking all of these projectiles at once. So with that in mind, the split-second decisions that you make, well, okay. The fact that the game is so simple is an asset. It's not that I like the game despite its simplicity. It's that I like the game because of its simplicity. Both its visual and its design simplicity actually allow it to be deeper than it would be otherwise. You can imagine if this game were harder, because the depth of the game, like how deep you can go on like making complex routes on the fly and like having like backup plans and stuff like that, which I'll explain in a second. But how deep you can go on this stuff is actually limited mainly by your ability to perceive the threats that are coming at you. Okay? To perceive the information, to actually take in, to process the very simple information quickly enough. Okay? And so the fact that what that information is incredibly simple. It's always just a bullet. of a certain like size and shape or whatever, it's always just a bullet and the way that it's moving. And visually, those bullets are incredibly easy to parse. I think this game would be actually significantly worse if it had not just good graphics, but like, I guess just good graphics in any sense, right? If it had better graphics than this, I think it would be a shallower game in practical terms, like, right? Like, because you wouldn't be able to process the information quite as quickly, unconsciously, effortlessly. This super simple bullets are incredibly easy to parse, and that makes the game better. Now, what was I saying about backup plans? The routing through the bullets in this game. So I'm talking about on the fly routing, right? I'm not talking about routing in like arcade shmup terms or whatever. I'm talking about something that you were doing in the moment all the time. The decisions that you're making about which way to go, the path that you're going to take through these big waves of bullets that come often. The routing is more complicated than you think, because similar to Cinco Paus, actually, the randomness, and this is again where the procedural generation adds so much more depth than you would think it does. Things can appear at the very last second that are going to change everything, and a split second difference in how quickly you decide on a route can make a world of difference in your consistency. So when you're playing this game, you naturally build this type of thought process that's constantly running, where you're thinking, okay, this is the route that I'm kind of leaning towards right now based on these bullets. This is all happening at such a high speed, right? This is all happening at an insane pace, like way faster than I can explain it. But like within a second, you're thinking, okay, right now I think I should go this way around this set of bullets. This would be the easier way, maybe. Maybe this would be like the more lenient, right? You're thinking about which path through the bullets is going to require more or less precise inputs. So you might be thinking like, okay, path A through this wave of bullets is going to be more lenient than path B, but I could take path B, and if something spawns right at the last second before my guy switches from moving up to moving down, I'm going to switch from path A to path B. If a particular bullet spawns in a particular spot and is moving at a particular speed, I'm going to actually switch and do at the last second and do plan B. And so you're developing these like branching paths, like with so little. The screen, what's happening on the screen is so simple, but you're actually developing pretty complex plans when there are more bullets on the screen, and the slower moving bullets become they can, a slower moving bullet can last through multiple waves of faster bullets in such a way that you like get attached to this slow bullet in such a funny way that's like, this thing should be the least threatening thing on the screen, and yet I'm having to like route around it slightly differently. I'm going around it this way and then I'm going around it that way, and like I've had to change my plans around this one stupid bullet like in such complicated ways. Like, hopefully that gives a sense. It's really hard to concisely capture what this thought process is like, but it's extremely interesting, and hopefully that's at least given you a sense of what it's like to be good enough at this game to get like a 200 seconds or something. But that's just a small part of it. So, I mean, I don't want to say that's a small part of it. That's a very significant part of it. That is maybe the core of it, right? But what you appreciate about the game, there's a few different areas that this game, a few different things that this game highlights in my experience, in my own brain, in how my own brain works, that I think it highlights them better for me than any other game that I know of. One is just the variety of thought processes like I was describing, and the variety of slight variations of like patterns of perception and info processing, like I mentioned. Like it's just slightly different in a meaningful way when you get a slightly different pattern, and by playing this, you can play this game for 50 hours and still be seeing patterns that are meaningfully different from anything else that you've seen, or at least like now that you've been playing for 50 hours, like you can actually handle this pattern that was too difficult for you before. And yeah, there's something about watching how your mind processes information. And like I said, this game can go deeper because of the simplicity and the simple visuals. It can go deeper on that information processing. It's like a specific category, tiny category of mental activity that's relevant all the time in our lives. How you process extremely simple information, patterns of information. And it lets you somehow study that and see that. It puts the spotlight on that process in a way that is better and goes deeper than any other game. So that's one thing. I had a second thing in mind that I'm now forgetting. So I'll say the third thing and then try to get back to it. Another thing is something that Bennett Foddy has talked about with respect to his design practice in a lot of his games, where he's interested in the process of choking. Right? He's interested in how people choke when they are under pressure. And he tries to design games that will make people have some kind of interesting experience around that emotion. Like maybe they will start to savor the flavor of like, oh no, I'm about to choke. Oh, like, appreciate that. Appreciate how interesting that is, that something has flipped in your mind, and you now no longer know how to do this thing that you no longer can execute this thing that you could have executed before you were nervous about it or whatever, before the stakes were high. I think that's very interesting as well, but his games don't actually do it that much for me. I like him as a designer and like his games, especially Baby Steps, in spite of this, and I especially like them for other people for whom this thing that I'm talking about does work. But they don't actually do that for me that much. Angel Game, on the other hand, I think is the perfect choke factory, right? It's like the fact that the fact that the tension, the intensity, the number of bullets coming at you at any given time, the difficulty ebbs and flows so frequently, and you can have these lucky periods where you it's not just that you will have these long lucky stretches where it's not that hard, right? Like once you're good enough to get like 100 plus or whatever, you'll get long stretches like this, like we're watching right now, where it's a break, and it works well as a break. You don't want the game to be 100% intensity all the time, because this is a good like flow, stay, zone out kind of game. You want it to be mostly chill, but and it would be fatiguing if it were whatever, all this stuff that I've already said. But the fact that the other thing about the more low key moments where there's not as many bullets coming is that it gives you space. It gives you space to overthink, right? It gives you space to naturally start wondering, it seems like I must be getting close to a PB, And by the way, the fact that there's other components to this. The game doesn't have a timer. There's no timer on the screen that shows you how close you're getting to your PB. you're just going, and you can try to zone out and whatever, but at some point you will start to wonder, specifically because the timer is not on screen, you maybe wonder more. Am I getting close to my PB? Like, oh, I must be getting close, right? Like, you anticipate it, and then when you actually do get a PB, when you actually do cross your best time ever, it has this one sound effect that he added later in an update, which is this ding sound. No, I'm saying that the ding reinforces this. The ding reinforces this because when you get that, when you do, it highlights the fact that you have now PB'd, right? And other games do this, Devil Daggers does this and stuff, but that's just calling your attention to it even more, right? So anyway, for me, this game is such a choke. Such a choke heavy game. I become aware and I am forced to focus on the feeling of choking and the experience of choking. And I'm forced, if I want to get better at it, I'm forced to play mindset games, right? I'm forced to play a meta game of managing my own mindset, trying different mindsets, thinking about like, am I more likely to choke when I play this game in the morning versus at night? Or like after I eat a big meal, am I like playing worse? And am I like, like all those kinds of things, and all of the kinds of things like, you can brainstorm ideas like, maybe if I repeat a certain mantra to myself over and over again while I'm playing in my head, like that will somehow help me play better or not choke or whatever. Like I feel like it naturally leads to that type of interesting overthinking. It's not really even overthinking because you can improve at games by going down these kind of roads. So yeah. I don't know exactly if this is what I was going to say as my number 2 thing, but it's also extremely interesting how the type of dynamic difficulty that this game has. I think of it as dynamic difficulty because to me, dynamic difficulty is anything that is going to, well, I don't want to try to define it. But the point of dynamic difficulty is that a more skilled player can experience more difficulty within the same mode or whatever, right? They can have something that's more tuned to their skill level. And this game has a very strange type of dynamic difficulty where, related to that routing that I was talking about earlier, you want to... The bullets are constantly trying to pressure you to the right side of the screen, right? And new players will often just not feel confident enough to cut through the bullets, not see the opening for too long, and they'll end up pressed against the right side of the screen, and then a wave will come that is guaranteed to kill them because they're pressed up against the right side of the screen, okay? An expert player is thinking ahead and trying to stay closer to the middle wherever possible, and they're managing the risk of taking a tight cut through, taking a difficult route through a wave of bullets that would put them closer to the middle versus the risk of, taking an easier route that would leave them farther to the right for the next wave that they haven't seen yet, right? And so there's this kind of sort of dynamic difficulty, this strange sort of dynamic difficulty that you start engaging with automatically as you get better at the game, where you take more difficult routes and you do more of that complex routing stuff and all of that, and you just take more precise lines to stay closer to the middle more often in order to minimize the odds that the next wave is just going to kill you because you're unlucky. That I think is really good and really interesting. I feel like I've more or less covered it. By the way, feel free to challenge any of this. Like a big part of why I'm doing this, this isn't just, the stream is not just to circle jerk my great taste, although maybe it's a little bit that. But it's also the main motivation for doing this today was, as a follow-up or a companion piece to my stream last time about the Metacritic Top 100 and why I don't like those games. So yeah, I'm really trying to get at like what makes a good game. What do I think is a good game, and why? And yeah, like yeah. So I would like for you to understand. And if you're confused about anything, feel free to challenge or ask. Okay, I think I did this entire rant without reading the chat. So let me catch up before we continue. Miyamoto cried the first time he saw Angel Game. Dude, I kind of did. I loved the game immediately. I really did. So maybe that contradicts what I was saying about how you got to get good to appreciate it, but also I got to like 60 seconds pretty quickly, whereas like a lot of people seem to struggle to break like 20 or something. No, not trying to flex, but that's just how it is. Okay. It's not my jam, but I see the sauce. Yeah. Yeah, it just goes deeper on certain things than any other game. It just does. It's kind of undeniable. Okay. Would I say this game requires the most vigilance out of these kinds of games? Vigilance, it doesn't feel like vigilance. See, when I play Cinco Paus, that feels like vigilance. Because in Cinco Paus, anything can kill you at any time, in an instant. And, one mistake can ruin your run, and the stakes are so high because the run is like 20 hours long if you're playing at the level that I got to. So, that feels like vigilance. Angel Game feels like more like flow state because I think the fact of it being real time and the fact of it being execution based, so that you and so chokeable like that, those things make it more possible to choke, right? And part of here's another thing about this is related to what I was saying about getting into the right mindset and all of that stuff. An interesting experience that I had with Angel Game is trying to get my mind into, you can't force your mind into certain patterns, right? You can't force a mindset, but and that makes it more interesting, right? When you're trying to cultivate a certain mindset that you think will help you play a game better, you have to do it indirectly. You have to find weird ways to get, you're a human being and you don't have good visibility into your right brain, especially, and it responds to what you're doing, but not in a predictable or a comprehensible way, right? And so to get your right brain to do what you want it to do, you have to do this kind of mindset game that I was talking about. And a vigilant mindset where you're constantly hyper focused and fully aware and paying attention and looking at that left side of the screen and ready for every bullet to spawn, it turns out to be not quite right. And what turns out to be ideal, in my experience at least, is some kind of almost paradoxical marriage of vigilance and flow. And trying to cultivate that almost paradoxical marriage is an extremely interesting thing about the game as well. That's more specific about something that I had already said was interesting about the game. Yeah. Thank you, Lynn, for the compliment. One secret about fighting games, a bit too easy. Yeah, I do wish baby steps. My big wish about baby steps is that the stuff that was the right difficulty for me had been integrated into the main game a bit better, somehow. It's obviously not like an obvious. There's not an easy solution for that in that design. The design, they do so many things that are very well considered and cohere extremely well and blah blah blah. And you would have to throw away a lot of what is good about the game for other people and for me in order to or at least change it, reconsider it in order to make that happen. But yeah, I wish the baby steps. I think, yeah, maybe the earlier FODI games are arguably are maybe a bit too easy for me. Baby steps, the main game is especially too easy for me. But then a lot of the challenges in the game, the post game type of stuff, the optional stuff, would have been great for me but my experience with the game was worse because they felt, because of how they were just strewn about, and I had to do a bunch of extra walking around to get to them and all this stuff. But love the game, absolutely love the game. One of the best games of the decade so far. If you haven't played Baby Steps yet, you absolutely need to. Why would an experienced player choose the more difficult cut through the bullets if your survival doesn't depend on it? Your survival does depend on it. Well, your survival could depend on it. And this, the game is so random, and people have a problem with this. I don't have a problem with this, really. At least not the same way that other people do. The game is so random that you can't count on your skills. You can't think, oh, the way to get a PB in this game is to not make any mistakes, right? The way to get a PB is to minimize risk for as much as possible for as long as possible. And the way that you do that is by making those kinds of trade-offs between, I think the risk for me cutting through these bullets right now, the risk that maybe I misjudged and there's not as much space to cut through as I thought because this bullet's going to move a little faster, or the risk because I'm just going to press the button not quite at the right time. Those kinds of risks, weighing those kind of risks against the randomness risks, right? The risk that you just get unlucky if you don't cut through here right now. You get unlucky with the next wave and there's no way to cut through, or an even harder way to cut through. Yeah, hopefully that makes sense. I do wonder at what point it becomes a Sisyphean exercise in finding joy in the depth of doing basically anything. Existing itself is a complicated process. To me, it doesn't feel like a Sisyphean exercise at all. It's like the game has served up on a platter for me this perfect microscope into a certain corner of my own mind. And it's not effortful, right? It's not effortful to, it's not effortful to appreciate that. And it's fun. I have a great time playing Angel Game. And then having played Angel Game, I understand more about something that's very hard to articulate. Okay. We're getting there. We're 6 out of 9 at the 2.5 hour mark. I said a single quick bullet. Like I said, a single quick bullet is at the back of your mind at all times, but it's not at the front of my mind, right? I don't know. There's some mindset that you can get into. I find it hard to describe. Again, I don't understand my own brain fully, but there's some kind of mindset you can get into that you want to get into when playing Angel Game, where you are simultaneously relaxed and vigilant, or something like that. Hard to explain. Okay. I will say this is not really relevant to why I like the game personally, but it is something I admire about it. I admire that it's so unfair. No, I don't want to say that. There is something nice about it. Where similar... I'll get into that some other time. It's not super relevant. It's not super relevant. I often feel like when I like a thing and I try to justify why I like it, it's very post hoc reasoning. Yeah, I'm doing my best. I'm doing my best. You know, there is certainly, like, I've tried to explain something and I think about it more and it sounds nice, but when I think about it, you know, I've tried to explain something to myself, explore why I like something. And I've tried to understand why I like something and gotten to a point where, like, something sounds really nice, right? And it's interesting, right? It's an interesting idea of why I might like it. But when I think about it more and the more I sit with it, the more it kind of feels wrong. So I do think you can feel, at least sometimes, when it's that kind of post hoc rationalization. You're just trying to defend your own taste, and really your taste is completely incomprehensible to you. But yeah, I'm doing my best, and I think it's a worthwhile exercise, even if there's a little bit of that hidden in there. I don't think there's that much, but who knows? It is a fun time regardless. Okay, Infernium. Now, Infernium highlights something interesting. Is there a long play of this game or whatever? Infernium gameplay, PC HD. What the hell is this? It's not Infernium. Infernium gameplay, no commentary, whatever. Jesus, please turn the sensitivity down. Sorry. Okay, this is better. I just spat. Okay. I just spat all over the chat. So Infernium is also a kind of exploration-y, adventure-y kind of game. Related to what I said about that kind of game earlier, it has a lot of that surprise factor, right? It has a lot that's different about it in a way that makes it impossible to predict things that are coming and stuff like that, like you can in like a typical Metroidvania or whatever, or like a Zelda game, like a old school 3D Zelda game. Okay, first, what is it? Thank you. Thank you. You gotta help set me back on the rails sometimes. I'm very bad at talking in a structured way, which, you know, I really need to get better at that. I just get too excited, man. I just get too excited to get to the heart of it, right? To get to the real interesting stuff. Okay. So yeah, it's an exploration kind of game. You have it's very simple. You get one more ability later, but mostly it's just walking around and using this one mechanic, which is this teleport mechanic. When you aim the teleport thing, it slows you down, and it slows down your movement, and it aims so that you can aim at a spot on the ground, and if you aim correctly at valid land, then you will teleport there immediately, and you have a certain range on that and whatever. This is a really good mechanic because of the exact way that it works. First of all, it's a method of traversal that is different from other exploration games, and it lets you do things that are different, get to places that you wouldn't normally be able to get to, and so there's patterns to learn specific to this game that are different from other exploration games, and that makes it feel more like an adventure in the ways that I was talking about earlier, et cetera, et cetera. You know, like something like this, like, spoiler for the first area, but like, it might be good to know that there is stuff like this in the game. Looking out this window, it's not a window that you can walk through, but there's a window that you can go through with your teleport if you target that little platform. And so that's a little like hidden passage, you know, that's gonna like open up a shortcut or whatever and get you to some other stuff that you might care about. So there's just little things like that because of the core traversal thing that are different from other games. There's also the specific way that it works. Like what it considers valid ground to teleport on is not just anywhere you can stand. It's like specifically the end of your aim, the end of your little line thing there has to be on. I guess it is anywhere you can stand, but like there's nuance to it. Let me just say there is nuance to that can be a little bit janky sometimes, actually, in a way that's not great. But this person does not understand how the light absorption mechanic works. But anyway, there is detail to that makes it so that you have to pay attention to the texture of the world, like figuratively, but also literally the texture of the world. Like you're literally looking at the textures a lot and thinking about them a lot more than you would in a normal 3D game, because you're thinking about, okay, the fact that there's this little, I guess it's the shape more than the textures, but you are looking at the textures. But like the fact that there's a little bump in the ground right here like matters, and this one brick is sticking up right here, like that matters. And the fact that like I don't quite have line of sight on the ground from here, but if I stand up on this tiny little bump here, I can whatever. Like stuff like that. That also reinforces the adventure game qualities, right? It helps emphasize the adventure game qualities because it's getting you more involved with the world. It's getting you to think about the world more, and in a different way than other games. You can think about this game, I think, to understand the core of what I love about this game most, the best comparison point is Dark Souls 1 or Demon Souls kind of, but like Dark Souls 1, think about like the best exploration moments in Dark Souls 1. Both large and small scale. Like, you know, people love about Dark Souls 1 that it's been discussed to death how, you know, the world design is kind of cohesive. It's, you know, the world, it connects back on itself, right? You go through the undead burg and blah, 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 and then you get to the church, and then you take the elevator and it goes back down to Firelink Shrine. There's stuff like that in the game that people love, where the overall world design feels well considered and interesting, and it's fun to discover that, and it's fun to take advantage of that and everything. And there are reasons to go different. You're making decisions about which way to go first that have gameplay implications and have, there are reasons why you might choose one way or the other, and those reasons are interesting and all of that stuff. But also on the small scale, like think about when you're exploring Undead Burg. Dark Souls is just one of the very best examples of like exploring a really dense space where everything, it's like they just tried to pack as many ideas in and as many interesting little twists and things. It kind of relates back to the communication thing that I was talking about, The Witness, in a way, but in a more like immersive way. I don't know, but you're constantly noticing these little things if you're paying attention, right? Like I can cut back under there, or I can actually drop off this little thing here, and how is that going to get me back to up here, and maybe this is going to lead to this other spot that I can kind of see from over here. Does this ladder connect down to there? Like there's this puzzle kind of putting together and understanding this intricate space that you're exploring, and there's little tricks and interesting twists in how they constructed it that might be fun to figure out and surprising, and the decisions about which way to explore first. Like if I go this way first, like that might let me take out an archer or whatever who's going to be a problem if I go the other way first. Stuff like that. It gets much deeper than that, but we'd have to talk through footage to get into a specific example. But hopefully people know what I'm talking about with that. And this game, Infernium, does that, in my opinion, or at least some component of that. No, I think that whole thing I was just describing, Infernium is the best game at that, I think. I think that the teleport mechanic makes it work better. It lets them hide things a little bit in more interesting ways and have more surprising ways that you can traverse the environment. Finally figuring out how the light works, light absorption. But also just it's really thoughtful. It's thoughtful, interesting level design, and it's so enjoyable to make your way through these areas. And like Dark Souls, even more so than Dark Souls, there are threats in these areas that you have to worry about. Things will kill you immediately when you round a corner in this game, and you have to be ready for that, and you have to be cautious in the same way as Dark Souls. And the game actually makes you engage with the level design by adding that kind of tension and that kind of peril. You're often in peril. Yeah. It's just, yeah, I think that's the core of it. Core of why I love the game. It's the best version of that. It's got such an indie design flavor to it. Just so much weird stuff happens in this game, despite the fact that it's like a big 3D game. Like, this is a one-man project. It's kind of amazing. Like, I think the art direction, obviously it's got some Unreal Engine-ness to its look. But I think he really did an amazing job of scoping this game and deciding where to focus his attention to make an overall experience that is about as good as it could be, about as amazing as it can be for a one-man project in a few, made in a few years. Like, yeah, I think the art style is very evocative, and it's got this, also going with the adventure game kind of thing. It's got this dream world kind of thing that also helps it feel more like an adventure, and helps them do more interesting things as well, because a dream can be kind of more abstract. They're not married to realistic whatever. Yeah, there's just a ton of amazing stuff in this game. It is I will say more than any other game on my list, it is in my top 10. It is not for everyone. And not just that, actually. That's not really what I'm saying. I think Cinco Paus is probably more not for everyone than any other game on my list. But more than any other game on my list, Infernium is arguably not well designed. There's a lot that can go wrong in a playthrough of Infernium that really should have been done differently, I think. And there are things that you can definitely argue that the game is to blame for if you have certain experiences with the game. And at the end of the day, all I can say is I didn't have those experiences. I think it's a game that tends to go very smoothly and go very well if you are kind of locked in on what the designer wants you to think, and you're following those kind of lines. And the more you try to do wacky, not sequence breaky, because you can do a lot of, there is tons of room within the intended design of this game. There's tons of room to do things different ways and stuff. But yeah, I think the further you get from like understanding what the designer is putting down, the worse your experience is likely to get. But the way that I play games, this was an amazing game for me. What else can I say about it? I will answer that later. How was the holiday? I'll answer that later. It's very challenging. It's got great tension. Little things about the mechanics and the level design elevate the tension in a really great way. It's got a great New Game Plus mode that does a surprisingly good job of keeping the what's good about the first playthrough, and letting you have something like that experience again, and letting you kind of go deeper on certain aspects of the game. Yeah, I love the game. Super underrated. I feel like I need a little more of a break. Maybe I will answer the holiday question. Yeah, shout out version 1.01 specifically. Got your chud friends to play Angel Game. That's good, man. Yeah, a lot of people enjoy Angel Game. You know, it's kind of got that Flappy Bird thing to it, where you can just pick it up and play it immediately, right? And yeah, I think most people don't take issue with it as like a, yo, this is fun, but they do take issue with me putting it on my top 10 of all time or whatever. So that's more what I was defending there. But yeah, Angel Game I find is a recommendation that goes down pretty easy for most people. Play some solitaire. John Blow style. We're doing the John Blow style stream. I guess I'll answer the question. How was my holiday? It was great. I feel very refreshed. I had lots of interesting ideas for the while trying not to think about the work that I'm doing for this channel and stuff. I had many interesting, good ideas for it. And I chilled. And I felt the warm sun on my skin. And hung out with people I don't get to hang out with very often. And stuff like that. And it was great. Are we at number 1 yet? Number 1 is Cinco Paus. We're past number 1 because this is out of order. We'll maybe talk about the order a little bit when I pull up that the other list. So if you weren't here at the beginning, I'm going to, when I finish going through my top 9 that I have just had this image ready to go already from before, I will pull up a top 50 that is ordered that I made before. That was not as recent, so there are some things that are not accurate about it. There's some things that are missing and stuff. But we'll talk about that and try to decide on what number 10 is, and maybe look at the order a little bit more. Anyway, yeah, vacation was great. Okay, Post Void. We got to go back to, where is this? Got to go back to here. Everyone subscribe to Velasquez, or however you pronounce that, for his impressive gaming. So here's a high level Post Void looks like. Okay, maybe we should start with low level. Post Void gameplay. Complete run. That's probably good. So it's an extremely frantic, fast-paced. People call it a boomer shooter, but I think it's extremely misleading. Not every FPS, crusty-looking FPS in a hallway is the same as far as what the gameplay actually feels like, and this feels really just about nothing like Doom or modern incarnation boomer shooters, you know. So the way this game works is it's a roguelike. I mean, really, it feels like an arcade game, right? It feels like a procedurally generated levels arcade game, because it's very score based. People don't realize this about the game. The game doesn't do a good enough job of like pushing you, encouraging you to go for score, and so people think this is a very shallow game. They think you know, oh, the game has like 10 Steam achievements, and I got all the achievements in like 2 hours, and I beat the game, so it's not a good game. There are worlds of depth beneath that experience. This is a 100-hour game, right? This is a 100+ hour game. Like, I've played 70 hours of this game and written a big essay about it that you can read if you want to hear more about this game. And actually, let me pull that up. Post Void, Jack Crawford. I can't spell my own name. So I wrote this about Post Void. Do this. Shut up. I don't want to subscribe. So yeah, I recommend the game. Talk about what's interesting about it. This is me talking about what's interesting about it. But I also the second half of this. Okay. First of all, this is me. This is the depth of the game, right? Like, this is the Post Void iceberg, and really this is nothing. Like, there's so many other things. There's the most interesting things about the game are not really captured in this because they don't really fit into a short phrase like this. But it's I really like the system of the game and the experience of getting better and getting to these deeper levels, like I described with Cinco Paus and other games that I love. Like this is literally like what most people see. Even if you beat the game, this is what you see. I mean, maybe a little bit into this, but not even like strafe sliding. Not this. Like, yeah. It's truly like so many levels below this, and you have to try to keep playing the game and play for score in order to get to this stuff. And a lot of people don't really care about score in games, which partially I just don't think I'll ever understand. Because to me, if the gameplay is interesting, it's interesting. But also, I do think part of why, let's go back to this. Part of why people often don't like score play in games, they care more about survival, is because of the tension of playing for survival, right? Like, when you are playing for score and something goes wrong, or when you're worried that something is about to go wrong, the tension is just different because you're not going to literally die and kill the run, right? In most games. Like, when you're playing for score in Dodonpachi, like, I guess that's a little bit different because you need to save up resources for the TLB or something. I don't know. I haven't actually done that. But in a lot of games, at least, like, there's not very much like survival threat. Your survival is not threatened most of the time, and so it doesn't have that sense of stakes, even though your real goal is potentially being lost when you mess up. Post Void, and then this is true of Cinco Paus as well. I feel like I've talked about this on stream so many times, but I'll briefly talk about it again. Post Void fixes that problem, at least for me, because there is, and I talked about this even just now with Angel Game, there's dynamic difficulty that you are taking on yourself, right? You are choosing to take on additional difficulty by going faster in Post Void. And so let me show you what a good Post Void run looks like. This is the current world record. You'll notice that it's quite a bit faster, and that makes it harder. That makes it a lot harder to survive, for reasons I won't get into because I've explained it on stream a bunch before, and I explained it in that essay. But You're taking on additional difficulty, and that difficulty actually does affect your survival. You are risking your life to score. You are putting your survival at risk because it is necessary to do that in order to go fast enough to get the score that you want. And so that, to me, solves at least part of the problem that people have with score play in a lot of games. By maintaining that kind of tension, you are constantly there's constantly a threat of death, right? So I like that about the game. I like the crazy depth of it. The depth of it is really strange, and I think unintentional. I think the main thing that is strange about the depth of this game is very unintentional. So a lot of the depth comes from, well, maybe this isn't really the depth. The fact that you can crank the difficulty up this high is that is possible. It's possible to crank the difficulty as high as what we're seeing right now because you can go fast. Because you can go this fast, and the reason that you can go this fast is because of some specific tech, some of which is definitely intended, and people don't realize that it's intended, and people completely miss it when they play the game kind of casually. But some of it is I'm pretty sure unintended, because it's very strange. And the way that it works is the way that you're facing matters in a specific way that's very different from the way that you're trying to. It's like the way that you're facing affects how you're going to move. And it's like the way that you're facing not just relative to the way that you're moving, but it's the way that you're facing relative to like compass directions, right? Like when you're facing true north versus facing when you're facing north versus facing like 30 degrees versus facing like 90 degrees versus whatever, like those there are distinctions there that affect your movement, which is just unlike anything else in any game. And the way that gets in your head when you're getting better at the game just feels very strange and interesting. And the way that you have to think about your basic movement is very interesting. And the tech, especially the unintended part of the tech, makes it so that the probably unintended part, I should say, makes it so that I guess there are more and more constraints as you get to the faster and faster types of slides that you can do in this game, types of movement that you can do in this game. They become more and more constrained so that you have to look and move a particular way, or like so that you can't do them in certain specific types of situations, right? So the movement that you want to do the fastest movement that you want to do as often as possible is the most constrained, and so you can't do it. It's the most situational. It's the most situationally relevant. And so you find yourself mixing up all the different movement options, and sometimes doing slower movement options, and sometimes you're able to, or sometimes it makes sense to do the very fastest stuff. And there's so much interesting, surprising depth of strategy in deciding which type of movement you're doing at any given time. Like Angel Game, there's depth from the procedural generation. Like every time you're rounding a corner, you are anticipating various things, and that the things you're anticipating are different in each level, because the types of enemies that spawn and types of patterns that you get in each level are different. The procedural generation algorithm is different in each level. So there's all this anticipation stuff that's happening, similar to what I was describing with Angel Game and Cinco Paus. There's all this depth that comes from that. There's this kind of back and forth, like how Angel Game has that downtime where you're getting lucky and then you're getting a little pretty unlucky, and like so many bullets are spawning at once, and it's intense for a little bit, but it kind of ebbs and flows. This kind of has that too, where it's a little bit chiller when you're running down a long hallway like this, and you have time to like think about the overall shape of the level, and you think about like anticipate what's going to be around the next corner and how you're going to round the next corner. Because I mean, there's this detail of like where exactly, like hugging a corner versus taking a wide turn around a corner can make a big difference versus like going down the middle. Like often you don't want to go down the middle because I don't know. I won't get into the details of strategy of this game, but suffice to say, there is so much to it, and it's one of the best fast-paced action games with depth, in my opinion. And yeah, a lot of what I said about Angel Game applies, but it's got a different flavor. It's got more complex systems, obviously, which that's interesting in a different way. The tech is very unique, feels very unique to execute, just on a like how it feels in your hands to play the game type of level. Yeah. I have convinced myself that it definitely does belong in the top 9. I was wondering earlier if it maybe is number 10 or something, but yeah, that's Post Void. I think yeah, I've talked about it a lot before, so I won't try to come up with more to say about it, even though there is definitely more to say. Rain World. I also talked about Rain World quite a bit recently, but I'll try to do it a bit again. What's with Rain World 1.01 differences? Is it like Silksong before patch? Haven't played Silksong yet, so I don't know. But yeah, Rain World is one of my. Rain World might be like my third favorite game of all time or something. It's like definitely up there. There's like, even among these games, right? Even among these games, there's pretty big power gaps. Like, yeah. I obviously love all of these games, but like, the difference between how much I like Rain World and how much I like Infernium or Post Void is pretty big. Anyway, it's an adventure game, again, but a different type of adventure game. It's not really exploration in the sense of like figuring things out in the environment. That's not really true. I'm realizing I don't really know how to explain what's great about this game. Well, I'll just start with the basics. You are a little baby. You're a little baby bitch, slug cat, and you are in a big, harsh, and scary world. And everything wants to eat you, and you have to find shelter and slowly make your way through this world and figure out where you can go and what you can do. It's a kind of a survival game, survival / exploration / adventure. It's also, it has a bit more story to it, or at least the story is a bigger part of the appeal to me. Or let's just say the writing, maybe story is a little bit strong somehow, a little bit of a strong way of saying it somehow, but more than most of the games. Although I could have talked about this in The Witness, and I didn't. I actually love the writing in The Witness as well. But more than most of the games that I love, the writing is a big part of the appeal for me. It's not a big part of the game. Like, not a lot of playtime is spent on that, but it's this like simple story that's got this like mythical appeal, is how I think about it. Like, like there's like a universal thing about like classic like myths that we recognize, like, you know, Icarus flying too close to the sun. Is it Icarus? Wait, yeah, surely it is. I don't know. I'm not the most well versed in this stuff, but you know, when you think about flying too close to the sun, that's like, that calls to mind a certain story that we all know and recognize as like a universal, relating to a universal experience, or like, you know, Odysseus's journey, Odyssey, right? Like the journey that he goes on is like, it is representative of certain high level, very abstract, like universal human experiences. And it makes you feel and think about those things and relate it back to your own life when you have certain kinds of, when certain things are happening in your life. Rain World, I think more than any other game, has that kind of quality where it gets at these universal, often when stories get at universal themes, it's like trite, and it's or it's like generic, or it's like I've seen this all before. It's very hard to do this very well, I think. But Rain World, more than any other game, gets at a universal life journey type of thing in a way that feels that resonates with the power of myth to me, and stays with me, and I think about it related to my life a lot. And yeah, there's not much writing in the game. We're talking about the 1.01 version of the game. There's not much writing in that version of the game. But it's the perfect amount to contextualize the journey that you go on through gameplay, and contextualize the struggle, and make it universal in that kind of way. And yeah, it's also just very strange in the way that it's strange. There's a lot of ways that it's strange, but it feels like a very alien world. It feels like I am on a real adventure, right? It feels like I am genuinely in this situation to a degree that's not common for me in games as an experienced player. Just because of a lot of the stuff that's so strange about it, but also there's a realness. They intentionally designed the game to feel real, to not feel designed, to feel like a world that exists independent of you. It's not designed for you. It doesn't feel like this is level design often that you're looking at. It feels like this is just how it is, right? It's not, the platforms aren't perfectly spaced for you to do whatever, and the enemies aren't moving in such a way that, is obviously designed for you to go this way. And like the map doesn't connect in such a way that whatever. It just feels like the world is what it is, and it's interesting, and you can figure out how to navigate it and survive it, but it's not designed for you. And it takes a very different approach. It has. Is this really core to what makes the game great to me? I'm not sure. But one thing that's at least interesting about the game is it kind of does what immersive sims don't. I've always felt let down by immersive sims because they give you so many ways of doing things, similar to what I was talking about with character action games. They give you a lot of different ways of doing things, and the ways are a little bit too obvious, and they like all apply in every situation. Like almost every situation in Deus Ex can be solved through stealth or through combat or through talking or whatever. Like they seem to usually want that, and Rain World kind of feels like an immersive sim in that, well, obviously it's immersive, like I've been saying, but also there's just so many crazy systems and mechanics in this game, but they're not obvious. They're not at all intuitive. You will discover them very slowly over the course of a normal playthrough, a first playthrough, and you really have to use everything you know and like really try to figure out more things. Yeah. Matthew Matosis in his Rain World recommendation video talks about this experience that he had with the game where he was messing around with, he like found a safe place to mess around with Slugcat's movement and test things out when he wasn't being threatened and stuff like that, and try to figure out what this character can do and what some more of the options are that he has, and realizing that this is like, he's like doing a real animal thing. Like he's doing like a real animal thing where you like, you play around in an unguided way, right? To learn how to move like a young animal will do something like that, right? And that is very interesting. I'm not sure how central it is to what I like about the game, but it's at least interesting. It's a beautiful commentary on suffering, and the way that different people respond to it is like part of what's beautiful about it. The fact that so many people think that it's an ugly and nihilistic and whatever kind of game, and the unfairness strikes them in a particular way that they just can't handle, is to me part of what's so interesting about it. And And that's something that works so much better in games, by the way, than other mediums. But yeah, it reveals something about different types of people and about mindsets and about how you shape your own reality, right? The meaning of what you're experiencing is under your control to a larger degree than people realize. Yeah, I find that very interesting, and that is a large part of what I like about the game. Yeah, there's again just like these other adventure games that I've talked about. There's just so much, even more so. There's so much that's just strange about it. You encounter so many things that are surprising and interesting, and that you have to grapple with and learn interesting things about and learn how to deal with. And you become the master of this world. And there's the right amount of backtracking in this game. You know, a big part of why I was saying Ocarina of Time is not a good adventure game for adults, but is for kids, is because as a kid, you're going to do a bunch of backtracking. You don't understand games well enough to like go straight to where you need to go all the time. And whereas as an adult, you kind of just breeze through Ocarina of Time, and the world layout and how everything works doesn't get loaded into your head. You don't encounter the same things in same areas multiple times naturally in a playthrough of Ocarina of Time as an adult, usually. And I think a big part of an adventure and getting immersed in the world and exploration and all of that is, or the appeal of it is like getting the world into your head and getting more familiar with it and going through that full arc of starting out not understanding anything and just getting bodied by every monster that appears on the screen to, fluently flipping around back through areas. It's got that Metroidvania thing where you go back through an area you've been through before and you can like do crazy movement and get through places so much more quickly than you could before, but in a so much less artificial way, because the world layout is, there's nothing artificially gating you. Sort of. You could argue that the gating between different major areas in this game is artificial, but it's in my opinion in the ways that matter, I think it's not artificial, and I think it works very well. Yeah, I think that more or less covers it. You love how there's such big things happening in the world, like these wild sci-fi concepts, but the gameplay is you dealing with the mundane and gritty consequences of those things to the degree that learning about them is really transcendent. I don't know if she's just talking about the lore though. Or maybe I mean the lore definitely fits what she's saying, but like there's also just like there's certain creatures that you encounter that if you start thinking about what the world is to these creatures, it's like, whoa. And what, not, yeah. You encounter entities and you encounter things that suggest, okay, don't want to show that. Sorry. I keep doing that when I pull up playthroughs of this game. Okay. So okay, I think that more or less covers it. Yeah, it's an absolutely beautiful game. It's one of the absolute essential games of all time, and I recommend the classic version 1.01, which you can set your Steam. If you get the game on Steam, you can set in the properties to play the original version of the game, because they did kind of water some things down. Oh yeah, I was gonna answer that. The 1.01 version. It's not the difference between 1.01 and 1.5, other than they added these other characters that I don't recommend playing. It's, or at least not as your first experience with the game. If you're really curious, that's totally fine. You can. There are some interesting experiences to be had with them, but I think those experiences are, I think I think you should think of them as very separate to the core of what is good about Rain World. And yeah, but yeah, 1.5, if you just play Survivor, which is the main character, the main mode on version 1.5, it's not that different from 1.01, but the things that are different, I do think water it down. And certainly if you get like the downpour version of the game, which is the expansion and or the DLC, which I absolutely hate, it's gonna like turn on all these crazy. It changes so much about even the base game, and yeah, adds all these settings that you can tweak and stuff. But like even without messing with the settings, or even with messing with the settings, it's different from version 1.01. Yeah, I won't get into the specifics, but yeah. Am I putting Angel Game above Cinco? This is not ordered. This is not an ordered list. I've said a couple times, but Cinco Paus and The Witness are my two goats. And then Rain World is kind of a little behind those. I mean, Cinco Paus is my goat. Let me just say my top 3. Okay, my top 3 is Cinco Paus, and then The Witness, and then Rain World for sure. I feel like SpyParty, if I got really deep into it though, could be up there. But yeah. Yeah, this is not an ordered list. Okay, so we've covered my top 9. Hopefully you now have a pretty good sense of what kind of games I like. What I think is good in games. Why I don't like the top 100 on Metacritic. Let's pull up this. Wait, did it? Okay, there we go. Yeah, this is a list I made a different time. Both of these are kind of outdated, but I think it's been a while since I made both of these images. But I think the top 9 that I was just talking through was I think that's still accurate. This is one I made longer. It's been longer since I made this one. Wait. Okay. I forgot that I didn't include Tunic because it's like I felt like it's a little too similar. A little too much overlap with the other games on the list. When I was making this image, right? When I was making that image of the top 9, I excluded Tunic, but Tunic is definitely okay. Tunic fills out the top 10. Okay, that was easy. But yeah, it does the appeal does overlap a lot with like the type of level design that I like about Infernium and Dark Souls and stuff. You get that kind of that kind of thing in Tunic big time, and it has a really interesting core concept that is I think explored really well, and aesthetically I think it really nails it and feels like a very cohesive game overall. It does secrets in a way that is inspired by The Witness big time, but different enough. Different enough to be very interesting. Yeah. It's a great game. It's a really great game. It's yeah. I think let me see if I still feel good about this order. Okay. Cinco Paus and then The Witness and Rain World. Outer Wilds at number 4. I don't know. I could see like Tunic or Steven's Sauce. I don't know. It's really hard. We'll just say that this order is good enough. Yeah, so Post Void, you'll see Post Void is over here, right? Is my mouse captured? Yeah, Post Void's over here. Because at the time that I made this list, I had just played a little bit of Post Void. And I liked it a lot. You know, I'd played more than the average player. But I hadn't gotten super, super deep. I was surprised by the depths of that I found in Post Void. And yeah, it just kind of slowly moved up over the course of like a month of getting deeper into that game. You love Tunic so much for having deep secrets that are totally approachable for solo play. Well, again, that's something that I didn't say about The Witness. But yeah, that's part of what I was saying. That very much comes from The Witness. But yeah, it is really nice to play a game where you feel like you are in good hands all the way to 100% completion. And The Witness and Tunic, both feel like that. Although Tunic, there's a little bit of a caveat there, but yeah, I'll get into that. Yeah, I need to play Animal Well. Yeah, I know. Hiss. We don't like. I played DayZ. I haven't. I never got it back. I never got into it back in the day. Words are getting hard here at the 3.5 hour mark. But can I just complain for a second? You guys have no idea how hard it is to like talk about like concepts that are really hard to fit into words, right? It's not just like small talk, like, although that would probably be hard for me too. I hate small talk. But like for 3.5 hours straight, like it's just me here like ranting. Good God, it's exhausting. But I love it though. I appreciate you guys. Anyway, yeah, DayZ. Is it still active? Is it still worth playing? Going and playing DayZ? Yeah, I was always interested back in the day, but didn't get around to it. Yeah, Snakebird also feels like it is threatening the top 10 placement. So does Braid. I mean, yeah. Anyway, by the way, the bolds here, I don't know why I chose bold over italics. I kind of think italics are just ugly. but the bolds just mean that I need to play more of these games, but I suspect that they would end up somewhere around here, right? See, I could have bolded post void, but I didn't even know. Is this serious? Did my sister talk about my she talked about my stream? Okay, that's weird. I did not give permission for that, but that's cool. Why is Dark Souls 1 specified as Prepare to Die edition? I was actually looking at this before stream and wondering why I said that. I mean, I do like things about the DLC a lot. I like especially art direction and like small scale level design stuff, like exploration stuff. Aren't they the same? Wait, what? Oh, no, yeah, they messed up a bunch of stuff in the remaster of Dark Souls 1. But I was thinking, like, I don't really know if I like Dark Souls Prepare to Die edition better than like Dark Souls just base game. I don't know. I think it elevates it. I think yeah. It's cool. What else? No Derelict Star. I love Derelict Star, but I actually think Laney game is the 2026 platformer for me, right? I played a ton of Derelict Star, I almost 100%ed it, but you know, it's okay with an amount of precision slop. Whatever, you know, some people just have a much higher tolerance for doing the type of platformer where you do the same thing over and over again and until you press the buttons at just the right time. Look, the fact that I love the game as much as I do, despite the fact that it gets into that stuff so much, tells you how good of a game it is, right? Like, I think it's just not quite as much for me because I have really burnt myself out over the years on, you know, I think I was never so much this type of player, but especially after speedrunning for so long, you know, that's just a lot of pressing the buttons at the right time, and you start to want something more. And it, you know, Derelict Star has more to it, right? Like it's you're always thinking about interesting things and doing new interesting tech and whatever, but like there's always something a bit different from every other precise thing that you've had to do so far, and that's great. And you're always discovering new stuff. You're always tempted to you're always motivated to get good at this precise stuff because you want to see a new screen that you haven't seen or whatever. Although I guess sometimes sometimes the game intentionally does not motivate you with some of the qubits and stuff, but a lot of the most unique stuff in the game, you are sufficiently motivated to, or I was sufficiently motivated to explore, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Laney game is just a different game, and I just, yeah, it's just more targeted at me personally. I think Laney game would definitely be on this top 50 now if I remade it. RIP Point B. RIP Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes. Just gotta leave it open, Elo. Yeah. Derelict Star probably would. No, yeah, Derelict Star would definitely be on this as well, though. I don't know why I said the way I said that made it sound like Derelict Star would not be on it. It totally would. I don't know. They'd probably be somewhere in the middle. I actually thought I forgot The Last Guardian and Shadow of the Colossus on this list. I totally did remember them. What was it that I forgot? There was some big omission that I was... I don't know. Anyway, I feel very exhausted after talking about these games so much and getting so deep into it for so long. So I'm not going to try to get into the topic of like what is a good game, you know. With all this in mind, like what is it that I actually mean when I say that a game is good, and how does that relate to what a good game is on like a top of Metacritic game is, and what most people say when they mean what most people mean when they say this game is good, which can be multiple different things. I think it's actually very interesting. I think it's actually a very, very interesting topic with a lot to talk about, and worthwhile to clarify what we mean when we say these things and what we're looking for in games and what's valuable. But yeah, not going to get into that right now. So yeah, I'm going to call it now. If you want to join the Discord, we're talking about games in there like every day. Lots of interesting discussion. Lots of me complaining about a game I didn't like the other day. No, I was look. I love Jonathan Blow, as gauche as that may be to say, or whatever. I have gotten so much out. I've been inspired by him over the years. I have gotten a lot out of what he does. I still watch the highlights channel for his whoever makes the highlights for his stream on YouTube, and get stuff out of that and find it interesting. And you know, even recently, like on Twitter, when he was complaining about Derelict Star in a way that really annoyed me. Annoyed me is not quite the right word, but it frustrated me a little bit. I didn't like to see that. Even then, when I questioned him about it, you know, when I replied to him about it, I did feel like I was walking on eggshells a little bit, but I did eventually get him to like give some interesting insight that was related to what I was curious about, you know? Like he said some interesting stuff about game feel and platformers and whatever. That yeah, I got something out of that. Even though I don't agree with his perspective on Derelict Star. But, you know, like nowadays he as a game critic is very frustrating sometimes. Like his reaction to Leap Year and his just how dismissive he was of that game. Like it's just crazy if you're thinking of him as a game critic, right? And he's not really a game critic anymore, right? Like that's clearly not his main thing. It never was really his main thing, but he did a lot of interesting game criticism. If you watch his old talks, like from 2008, 2010, whatever, Um, that is game criticism, right? And even fewer people know about, like, back then, like, he was writing about stuff like Space Giraffe. I remember reading him talking about Space Giraffe on his website and stuff like that. That really influenced my thinking about games. He was very far ahead. He is still, the stuff that he was writing in 2008 is still very far ahead of any YouTube critic in some ways. So yeah, I don't actually mean to insult Jonathan Blow. I think I hope no one is rubbed too much the wrong way by how I have been treating Twitter recently, because ever since I started doing the stream and stuff, I have treated Twitter a little bit more. This is my serious thoughts outlet now. So I no longer need Twitter as a serious thoughts outlet. So I sometimes just like I sometimes just throw stuff out there, and it's not entirely serious. I don't actually think he's a C tier game critic. Yeah. But yeah, The Witness. Obviously, I love the Jonathan Blow because I said The Witness changed my life, and in general, his thinking about games did change my life. Like that's. I got deeper into games when I was in college and stuff because of Jonathan Blow's talks and games and everything. So yeah, I mean, in a certain sense, he has to be S tier, and certainly as a game developer, designer, he's S tier. Okay, thanks for watching, everybody. Really enjoyed hanging out, and yeah. I will see you next time. Bye-bye. Join the Discord. Bye-bye.